Hey guys, tonight, we're doing something deeply unwise. We're stepping into a medieval winter. No thermal socks, no heated blankets, not even a lukewarm mug of cocoa in sight. Just you, the winsome turnips, and a whole lot of snowdrift regret. Picture this: you're trudging through knee-deep slush in boots that were clearly not made for weather. Your cloak is soaked, your hood has blown off for the third time, and your toes are somewhere between slightly numb and please just fall off. Ahead of you, a hunched figure waves vaguely toward what looks like a pile of thatched roofs, huddled together like they're trying to survive a group therapy session. This is the village. Welcome. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, drop a comment, letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Let's see who's cozy and who's also freezing in spirit. Now back to the snow. The entrance to the village is generously speaking minimal. 2 wooden posts, one of them tilting like it's had a long week, and a bent-over old man with a beard that has icicles in it. He gives you a look that says, "You again, even though you've never met." He points with a stick, not because he's guiding you, but because he physically cannot lift his arm higher than that anymore. Inside the village is quieter than you expect. No bustling markets, no jolly folk singing around fires, just smoke trails curling up from chimneys like they're too lazy to rise all the way, and chickens pecking at snow with the sort of existential dread only medieval chickens could know. You step through snow-muddied slush into the main road, which is really just a track carved by cartwheels and goat hooves. Every building you pass seems to sag under the weight of either snow or disappointment. One house has a window made from stretched animal bladder. Another has a door that's literally just a blanket nailed in place. You don't knock on that one. Eventually, someone notices you, a woman with strong arms and stronger eyebrows. She doesn't say hello. Instead, she hands you a wooden bucket and points at a well like she's daring you to try. You take it because you're polite and also vaguely terrified. Off to the well you go. It stands in the middle of the village square, which is just a wide patch of snow where everyone agrees not to let the pigs poop. The well's stone rim is rimmed with frost, and the rope creaks with the ominous moan of something that hasn't been oiled since 1243. Historical fact: break. Most medieval villages relied entirely on communal wells, and in winter these often froze over. People would take turns breaking the ice each morning, which was about as fun as it sounds. Water was drawn with pails attached to frayed ropes and frequently spilled because, well, human fingers weren't designed to function below zero. You lower the bucket. It thunks sloshes, and you haul it up with biceps you didn't know you had. Congratulations. Your fingers are now frozen in a permanent claw shape, and you can't feel your left pinky. You stumble back toward the house, or a house you honestly can't tell which one you're expected to go to. Thankfully, Eyebrow Lady points again. You follow. Inside, the first thing you notice is that you're not alone, not even remotely. The house consists of a single large room with a fire pit in the center, a hole in the roof for smoke that is clearly just decorative, and a healthy population of humans, animals, and something rustling in the hay that you refuse to identify. You're led to the corner of your bed, which consists of straw laid on uneven wooden planks, plus one very lumpy blanket that smells suspiciously like goat. Not fresh goat, like previously occupied goat. Someone hands you a cup. You hope it's tea. It's not. It's warm, though, which is really all you care about right now. You take a sip and immediately regret asking what it is. Quirky tidbit. In parts of rural Europe, a common warm drink in winter was a sort of fermented gruel part, beer part, soup part, questionable life choice, sometimes mixed with herbs, sometimes sweetened with honey, sometimes just chunky. A man across the fire burps. A child pokes at something in a pot with a stick that also doubles as a toothbrush. Someone sneezes directly into the communal stew. You pretend not to notice. You wrap the blanket around your shoulders and sit. Your breath makes misty clouds in front of your face. The fire doesn't crackle, it wheezes. A chicken climbs into your lap. You allow it. Scholarly debate moment. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers commonly brought animals inside only in winter, or whether it was more of a year-round arrangement. Some sources suggest pigs and chickens were winter roommates, while others argue that wealthier peasants had separate animal shelters, albeit still within smelling distance. You don't know who's right. All you know is that the chicken in your lap is warmer than you are, and you're starting to consider naming it Radiator. Outside, the wind howls like it's angry you're still alive. Inside, someone is snoring through their nose like a medieval chainsaw. You wonder if there's anywhere else in the room you could sleep. There isn't. Night is falling fast. Your feet are wet. Your clothes are stiff. You've been in the village for maybe 30 minutes, and already you're reconsidering your life decisions. But hey, you survived the first part. 6 more days of this. No problem. Probably your second morning in the medieval village begins not with birdsong or gentle rays of sunlight, but with the distinct feeling that your toes have ceased all diplomatic relations with the rest of your body. You try to wiggle them. Nothing. You slap your boots with your hands. Still nothing. For all you know, your feet have just decided to enter permanent hibernation. The chicken that slept on you has moved to your chest, using your heartbeat as a seat warmer. Thoughtful, you sit up slowly, trying not to crack in half like a frozen biscuit. The air inside the house is colder than you'd expect for a room with a fire. That's because at some point during the night, the fire surrendered. What little smoke remains trails up through the thatch and into the morning sky like a white flag of defeat. Someone has already opened the wooden door, and now the frigid air has free rein. A blast of wind greets your cheeks with all the tenderness of a slap. Welcome to day 2. You finally muster the courage to stand and look down at your boots. They are leather, thin leather, cracked leather, historical leather. The soles are about as thick as a modern-day napkin, and one of them has developed a hole that was not there yesterday. You slip them on, and your foot instantly screams, "Excuse me?" Historical fact. Medieval footwear, particularly for peasants, was notoriously flimsy. Most villagers wore turnshoes, soft-soled leather shoes, stitched inside out, and then flipped, which offered minimal insulation. Socks, when they existed, were wool and rare, often saved for church or festivals. On most winter days, it was bare ankles and prayers. You look around the room and realize something horrifying Everyone else is already up and working. The old man who snored like a dragon is feeding the pig. The boy with the sock is turning it inside out like it's a fresh pear. The grandmother is stirring what you desperately hope is breakfast and not last night's stew again. You feel judged by the chicken. You stumble out the door in search of something warmth, food sock's identity. Outside the village is bathed in early morning gray. Everything is crusted in frost. The sky is the color of ash, and your breath fogs the air like you're a medieval steam engine. You pass a girl carrying firewood. She looks about 8 and is balancing the bundle on her head like a seasoned professional. She's also wearing no gloves. You give her a weak smile. She gives you a look that says, amateur. You wander toward what you assume is the village square, hoping that somewhere someone is selling socks, or feet, or a new personality. Instead, you find a cobbler. Now, cobbler might be too generous. He's a man sitting on a stool with a pile of worn leather and a knife. He's hammering what appears to be a horseshoe into something that definitely used to be a boot. You approach and point at your footwear. He glances down, snorts, and says something like soft town feet in a dialect only Cold Wind understands. He offers to patch the hole with pig bladder. You nod like that's exactly what you wanted. Quirky tidbit pig bladder was a multi-purpose material in medieval times, used for windows, waterproofing shoes, making footballs, and even storing wine. A sort of medieval duct tape, if you will. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked, usually. You hand over a few coins, which he inspects like he's never seen money before, then gets to work. 5 minutes later, your shoe is functional again, if a little squeaky. You thank him. He grunts, a medieval 5-star experience. As you walk away, you realize the cold is not just physical, it's spiritual. It seeps into your thoughts, your joints, your sense of humor. You used to laugh, remember laughing. Now you chuckle, and your teeth click like a pair of castanets. You retreat toward the fire again. The grandmother has scooped something into a bowl. It's beige, steamy, suspicious. You ask what it is, and she says a word that sounds like ghoulish. You taste it. It's oats, mostly, with hints of bark and a daring splash of sour milk. A splash, in this case, being half a ladle. You chew, or rather, you contemplate the idea of chewing. You finish the bowl because it's warm, and because you're terrified she might give you more if you complain. Scholarly debate alert. Some historians argue that the peasant winter diet was more diverse than commonly thought, with access to preserved vegetables, dried beans, and salted meats. Others insist that for most people the menu was basically porridge with onion, and on special occasions porridge with regret. The truth likely varied based on region wealth and whether or not you had a pig that season. You thank the grandmother who hands you a hunk of bread that doubles as a dental test. It's dense, possibly predates you. You pocket it. Survival item, blunt weapon, doorstop, multi-purpose. You've been here less than 24 hours, and already you've lost the feeling in both feet, accepted a pig bladder as fashion, and eaten oatmeal that made your soul wince. Medieval winter has officially started, and it has no plans to let up. Tomorrow maybe you'll figure out how people actually stay warm around here, or maybe you'll just sit closer to the pig. Either way, Welcome to the long haul. You wake up before sunrise, which is unfortunate because the sun doesn't actually rise for another 2 hours. Medieval winter mornings aren't so much mornings as they are extended episodes of darkness, occasionally interrupted by frostbite. Your body aches in ways that suggest straw isn't a sufficient mattress. The pig yes still here is snoring with more confidence than anyone deserves. You shift, attempting to stand, but your legs have staged a quiet rebellion during the night. Every joint complains like a medieval monk asked to dance. You roll off the straw heap and land with a soft oof, managing to kick over a wooden spoon in the process. It clatters loudly. The chicken glares at you from a nearby beam. You're cold, not need a sweater cold, more like could legally be declared frozen produce cold. Your breath fogs the air in thick plumes. You're still wearing everything you own. 3 tunics, a scratchy cloak, a scarf that might be someone's old curtain, and you're still freezing. A local shuffles past you, shaking his head as if to say, "You chose this? Fair enough. Today's problem, sleep, or rather the lack of it." You ask one of your straw mattress mates how people in the village usually sleep through winter nights. He shrugs and offers only one word: together. Historical fact. In many medieval homes, families and often guests shared beds for warmth, a practice known as bundling. It wasn't romantic, it was survival. Heat was communal, privacy was optional. Sleeping alone in winter was basically social self-sabotage. Your bedmates unfortunately include a man who grinds his teeth so loudly you mistake it for hail on the roof, and a woman who kicks like she's auditioning for a medieval soccer team. Somewhere during the night, someone stole half the blanket. The pig unapologetic. You ask around for alternatives. "We sometimes sleep near the oven," someone says. "We don't have one," adds another. Then near the bread shelf. Pause. The rats like it there. You resign yourself to learning the true meaning of the phrase, sleeping rough. Then the village elder has an idea, the great bed. You're intrigued. You picture something ornate, perhaps carved wood layers of hay, even a second blanket. Reality check, it's a giant frame in the corner of a communal house, filled with so many people, it's less of a bed and more of a medieval clown car. You decide to try it anyway. You arrive late and are assigned a spot near the foot between a boy who sniffs every 30 seconds and a woman who talks in her sleep, loudly, in Latin. You settle in, quirky tidbit. There are records of enormous shared beds, including one in Great Britain dubbed the Great Bed of Ware, which could hold up to 15 people. Whether anyone actually slept peacefully in it remains highly questionable. In the dim light of a tallow candle, you examine your new sleeping neighbors. One man has wrapped his feet in cabbage leaves. Another appears to be cuddling a turnip. You decide not to ask questions. As the room cools and bodies shift, someone pulls the shared blanket. You fight back with your knees. Someone coughs in your direction. You inhale and consider your life. And then the worst part, snoring, begins. Not one person, multiple people. It begins with a low hum from your left, then a wheezing nasal buzz from your right, then a child whistling with every breath. It's an orchestra of exhaustion, and you're the only one without an instrument. Scholarly debate time. Some historians believe the communal bed fostered social cohesion and nightly gossip. Others argue it led to sleep deprivation, widespread lice infestations, and emotional scarring. Both sides agree the great bed wasn't as cozy as it sounds. Eventually, you doze off briefly. A nightmare wakes you. You dreamed you were being chased by a loaf of bread with human teeth. You don't want to unpack that. The candle has burned out. The fire is a faint red smudge across the room. You curl into yourself like a cinnamon roll of regret, clutching the edge of the blanket and hoping no one steals your turnip pillow. Around 4 a.m., someone rises to go outside. This is an event. Everyone shifts to make space. You are now spooning the snoring Latin speaker. Your dignity exits the chat. You wake again at dawn, or rather when the room reaches daylight gray and the pig returns. It snuffles your toes, which you still can't feel. A child giggles. You grimace. Welcome to morning 3. You stand, stretch, and hear something pop in your back. Possibly historical trauma, possibly your spine. Sleep, you realize, is not a nightly ritual in medieval winter. It's a brief negotiation between your body and the ambient temperature. You are not refreshed. You are not restored. You are merely vertical. As you step outside, cold air hits your face like a bucket of ice water with an attitude problem. But you made it through another night, technically. And tonight, you're definitely claiming the cabbage foot spot. That guy looked warm. By now, you've learned that breakfast in a medieval winter village is less a meal and more a negotiation between hunger and disappointment. The sun is up barely, more like thinking about rising. You shuffle toward the hearth, driven by a rumbling in your belly that feels both ancient and philosophical. The pot from last night is still there, sitting on what remains of the fire. It's not bubbling. It's not simmering. It's just thinking about food. An old woman stirs it slowly with a spoon that might also double as a walking stick. She gestures for you to sit and ladles out something that could generously be described as gray. You eye it suspiciously. It wiggles. You take a bite. It tastes like oat, plain oat, cold oat. A bit of burnt oat, perhaps, with the lingering notes of accidental ash and the faint aroma of someone else's fingers. Still, it's something. It's warmish. You chew in silence because the only alternative is weeping. Historical fact. Medieval breakfast, especially in winter, was often just reheated porridge or leftover bread, soaked in warm ale or milk if available. Most people didn't view breakfast as a major meal. Many went without entirely, especially peasants. Breaking the fast was more practical than pleasurable. Someone offers you bread. You accept eagerly until you hear it hit the table with a clunk. This isn't bread. This is a medieval building material. You attempt to bite into it. Your teeth bounce off with a gentle thud like tennis balls on pavement. A nearby child dunks their piece into their bowl and makes slurping noises. You try the same. The bread soaks up the porridge like a reluctant sponge. You chew. It gets marginally softer. You chew more. Eventually, you win. Your reward. A vague sense of fullness and a single solitary raisin. The grandmother grins. Luxury, she says. You try to smile with your frozen cheeks. You glance around the table. Others are eating the same meal with grim enthusiasm. One man sprinkles his with what might be salt or possibly just clean ash from the hearth. A woman to your left is drinking something from a wooden mug. You ask what it is. She shrugs and hands it to you. It's warm, it's cloudy, and it tastes like liquid bread. Possibly yesterday's bread. Possibly someone else's bread. Quirky tidbit posset, or caudle, was a common breakfast drink, usually a mix of warm ale milk spices and sometimes egg. Think of it as the awkward ancestor of the smoothie if the smoothie had regrets. You drink it. Your stomach grumbles in protest. You apologize to it mentally. Then the room begins to stir. People stretch. The pig is nudged outside with the grace of someone who's done this every morning since the Norman conquest. Children are bundled in cloaks and sent to gather kindling. One old man begins sharpening something on a whetstone and humming a song that sounds like a dirge sung by a shovel. It's time for chores. You volunteer to help fetch more food, partly because you want to be helpful, mostly because you're hoping to discover the existence of a medieval snack cabinet. You are handed a basket and sent to the cellar. You imagine a cozy stone room beneath the house filled with hanging meats, bundles of herbs, maybe even a hunk of cheese glowing like a holy relic. The reality? A wooden hatch behind the house, barely waist deep, half frozen, and smelling of ancient potatoes and broken dreams. You descend into the pit. It's pitch dark. You grope around and find victory, a shriveled apple, possibly from last fall, possibly from the Crusades. Either way, it's yours now. You pocket it. There's also turnips. Many, many turnips. Some with spots. Some with roots growing out like confused eyebrows. You grab a few and return triumphantly. No one celebrates. One child looks mildly impressed. That's enough. Scholarly debate interlude. Historians are divided on the quality of medieval peasant diets. Some argue winter meals were bleak and nutritionally poor, heavy on starches, low on protein. Others point to archaeological evidence suggesting that even poor villagers had access to a surprising range of preserved vegetables, dairy, and legumes during the colder months. What's agreed upon, nobody liked turnips, especially not by February. You help chop the turnips into the communal stew. The knife is dull. The turnip is not cooperating. You press harder. The turnip wins. Eventually, you hand it off to someone more qualified, a grandmother with upper arms like bread ovens and a knife that may or may not be sharpened on family secrets. While she cooks, you're assigned dish duty. This is less washing plates and more scraping wooden bowls with straw and a vague sense of effort. Water is scarce. Soap is theoretical. You try your best. In the corner, someone begins singing softly. A winter tune, maybe, or a hymn, or possibly just a song about the pig. The melody is oddly comforting. By now, your hunger has faded. Your feet still ache, your shoulders are sore, but you're getting used to the rhythm of the place. You sit back down by the fire a little stronger than yesterday. Not quite warm, but less frozen. You bite into your prize apple. It's mealy. You eat it anyway. One of the children offers you a dried plum. You thank them like it's a diamond. The child nods gravely. You share half. The child accepts with ceremonial seriousness. It is after all winter, and winter here, it's not just about colds. It's about surviving together slowly, one bite at a time. You're halfway through gnawing your mealy apple core when someone tosses a bundle of wool into your lap. It's damp. It smells like old goat. You flinch instinctively. Layer up, says a man with one eyebrow and 7 layers of clothing. Wind's picking up. You look down at the bundle. It appears to be a tunic, possibly from the previous century, and a pair of leggings that still remember the knees of their last owner. You begin to understand a vital winter survival rule of medieval life. It's not about fashion. It's about how much itchy wool your skin can tolerate before you lose your personality. You put the leggings on over your existing pants. You are now wearing 3 pairs of pants. You may be evolving into a wool-based life form, then the tunic, then a second scarf, technically a strip of curtain, but who's judging? Historical fact. Medieval peasants often layered wool garments to stay warm. Undergarments were made of linen when available, but outerwear was almost always wool. Cloaks were vital, and wealthy individuals might line them with fur, but for the poor it was more about piling than padding. You waddle outside like a heavily bundled toddler with a purpose. The wind greets you with a slap. Not a full one, though more of a just checking gust across the cheek. You pass a boy wearing 3 different shoes, none of them matching. He grins like a champion. A woman is tying her cloak shut with what looks like a bit of twine and defiance. Everyone has a system. You, however, are sweating slightly under all your layers, which means the inside of your garments is becoming a sauna, while the outside remains a freezer. The medieval layering strategy, it turns out, works best when you're constantly in motion. Otherwise, you're just marinating in regret. Come, says Eyebrow Man, help patch the roof. You blink. You were hoping for something indoorsy, like nap taking or pot stirring, roof patching sounds, elevated, in both the literal and terrifying senses. He hands you a bundle of straw and a small wooden mallet. You eye both skeptically. Soon you're climbing a wooden ladder that creaks with every step and appears to have been built by someone who had never met a straight line. The roof is thatch, basically bundles of straw tied together and layered like a haystack in denial. It's the medieval answer to shingles, and it leaks approximately 100% of the time when it snows. Quirky tidbit. Thatched roofs were common across much of medieval Europe. They were cheap insulating and could last decades if maintained. Unfortunately, they also harbored rats, caught fire easily, and collapsed under heavy snow if you got unlucky. All in all, a great value for money. You reach the top and start stuffing new straw into visible gaps. It's like plugging holes in a basket with shredded napkins. Every time you patch one leak, you notice 3 more. Eyebrow Man grunts approvingly, then disappears down the ladder. He leaves you there at the mercy of the wind and a thatch roof with commitment issues. Below, a few chickens cluck in disapproval. One child throws a snowball that misses you but nails a goat. The goat does not care. You try to focus. Your fingers, wrapped in thin wool gloves, are beginning to lose flexibility. The straw scratches at your wrists. A gust of wind nearly topples you. You crouch low, questioning every life choice that led to this moment. Then, with dramatic timing, snow begins to fall. Light at first, almost whimsical, then heavier. Then it becomes clear the roof is not waterproof. You scramble down in record time, landing in a heap beside the ladder, trailing straw like some sort of oversized bird's nest. Inside the house, Everyone pretends not to laugh. You strip off your top layer, which is now damp and straw-filled. You shake out your cloak. A mouse falls out. It looks equally surprised. Scholarly debate time. Some historians argue that layering clothes in winter was more art than science in the medieval period. There are debates over how many garments the average peasant actually owned. Some say 2 or 3 sets max, while others believe frequent patching and repurposing allowed for more variation. What's certain, laundry days were rare, and smell was a communal understanding. Now slightly less damp, but significantly more humbled, you sit by the fire to thaw. Someone hands you a cup of something hot. You take a sip. It's broth, barely. Mostly warm water with onion essence. You savor every sip like it's gourmet cuisine. The grandmother points at your sleeves and says something that sounds like wet wool is betrayal. You nod solemnly. Wet wool is betrayal. You peel off one sock and hold it near the fire. It steams. You set it down on a stone to dry. 5 seconds later, a cat steals it. You sigh. Outside, the snow thickens. A child begins crafting a snow figure. You think it's a snowman until you see it has 4 arms and a pig's tail. You don't ask. Inside, the room smells like broth fire smoke and mildly offended goat. You sit closer to the hearth, already planning how many scarves you'll wear tomorrow, possibly all of them, because in a medieval winter, the rule is simple: the more layers, the more life. Even if none of them match and most of them itch, there comes a moment in every medieval winter when nature calls, and it calls collect with no concern for your comfort, modesty, or the weather forecast. For you, that moment arrives just after dinner, which tonight was an unexpected delight: cabbage stew that only mostly tasted like shoe water. You're proud, you're foolish, and your body decides now is the time. There's no indoor chamber pot. You checked. Twice. One was a bucket full of onions. The other was a sleeping chicken. So you ask quietly, hoping for a polite solution. The reply is simple: Privy's Outback. You pause. Outback here means out into the icy darkness, across frozen mud, past a fence that definitely isn't a fence anymore. You ask if there's a torch. No need, someone says cheerfully. You'll feel your way. This does not inspire confidence. You wrap your cloak around you like armor, grab the nearest piece of vaguely dry wool to use as a scarf, and step into the night. The door creaks closed behind you, sealing your fate. The wind hits you like a freight cart full of knives. Your nose instantly regrets its decision to be born. The moon is trying its best behind thick clouds. You shuffle forward, guided only by memory and hope. Every footstep is a gamble. Is this mud snow or something worse? Eventually you spot the structure, the privy, a proud little wooden hut leaning slightly to the left like it's had a long evening. You open the door. Inside, it's colder than outside. The seat, a thick plank with a suspiciously dark hole in the center, radiates the kind of chill that makes your ancestors flinch. You lower yourself with the reverence of a pilgrim approaching a sacred site, but much less joyful. Historical fact: medieval privies were simple pit latrines, wooden seats over dug holes, often with a pile of straw nearby for wiping. In winter, they frequently froze solid. In fact, archaeological digs of medieval sites have uncovered frozen human waste, still intact, offering insight into medieval diets. Science is beautiful. You do your business as quickly as humanly possible. A splinter reminds you not to lean too hard. The wind whistles through the cracks. You wonder if ghosts get cold. Finished, you grab a handful of straw and do what must be done. You step out of the privy triumphantly, only to realize your left foot is stuck in something. Possibly mud, possibly history. You wiggle it free and shuffle back toward the house your dignity left behind somewhere near the goose pen. Back inside, no one comments. They've all done it. One woman pats your shoulder in silent solidarity. You sit by the fire and stare into it, questioning the last 20 minutes of your life. Try the pot next time someone murmurs. What pot? They point to a lidded jar in the corner. You make a mental note and a new best friend. Quirky tidbit chamber pots were common for night use in more affluent homes, or when venturing outside was dangerous. In crowded households, these could be shared, and yes, they had to be emptied each morning. In castles, garderobes, essentially stone toilets, overhanging a wall offered marginally more dignity. The fire crackles as someone throws in more fuel-dried dung, mostly, which you've learned not to question. The room fills with its distinctive aroma, halfway between scorched grass and barn memories. You stretch out near the hearth, warming your feet, which are now thawing with the slow, prickly vengeance of pins and needles. A dog curls up next to you, then realizes you're not warm enough and moves away. Fair. You're still wrapped in all your layers, of course. Taking anything off would invite cold back into your bones. One man across the room is drying his undergarments on a stick over the fire. You pretend not to notice. So does everyone else. The unspoken rule of winter living. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. Scholarly debate time. Historians differ on the precise hygiene habits of medieval peasants. Some argue cleanliness was seasonal, and highly regional people might bathe less in winter due to freezing temperatures, but wiped and washed hands more often than we assume. Others claim hygiene was a communal blind spot, evidenced by records of lice combs and communal sweat baths. What's agreed, everyone smelled like something, and no one was surprised. Someone passes around a mug of hot liquid. It's herbal, bitter, possibly boiled moss. You sip, your lips numb slightly. You decide that's a good sign. Eventually, the room quiets down. The fire burns low. People settle into their corners like quilted piles of wool and breath. You lie back on your straw, too tired to care that a goat is snoring softly beside you. Your cloak smells like privy and stew. Your boots are damp, but you're warm enough, and that's a rare kind of victory in this time. Tomorrow maybe you'll find gloves, or a scarf without holes. Maybe the wind will let up. Maybe someone will fix the privy door. But for now, you sleep, because if medieval winter has one lesson to offer, it's this. When you're not fetching water, fixing a roof, chasing your sock-stealing cat, or performing a frozen squat over a plank of wood, you sleep, and that's enough. Morning arrives not with a rooster's crow, but with the dulcet tones of a goat, relieving itself near your head. A strong opening to the day. You groan, roll over, and immediately regret it. Your back sounds like someone slowly uncrumpling a parchment map, and your left shoulder has apparently decided to retire. The fire's gone out again. Of course it has. The embers sulk in the hearth, offering all the warmth of a passive-aggressive sigh. You sit up, clutching your cloak around you like a bathrobe made of regret, and shuffle toward the door. Someone shouts your name, or rather the village approximation of your name, and waves toward the pen. You've been selected for livestock duty. You were hoping to spend the morning quietly pondering the meaning of life near the hearth. Instead, you are now the appointed goat motivator, cow enticer, and chicken wrangler. You trudge outside. It snowed again during the night. Of course it did. The ground crunches beneath your boots, and your breath turns into small clouds of visible suffering. The pen is a rickety fence surrounding several animals, none of whom look remotely interested in cooperating. One goat narrows its eyes at you. You nod back, trying to assert dominance. It sneezes on your shin. Historical fact. In winter, livestock were often kept in makeshift shelters or partially covered pens. They weren't just valuable milk, eggs, meat, wool, but essential for survival. Families rotated feeding duties, and it was common to bring animals indoors during extreme cold, sometimes sharing space and body heat. You grab a bucket of what might be feed and slosh your way through the pen. The sheep are already eating. The chickens follow you like you're their weirdly dressed messiah. The cow just stares. You offer a handful of hay. The cow blinks, then sneezes. Milking is next. You approach the goat with the caution of someone defusing a bomb. It's standing on 3 legs, looking smug. You sit beside it, bucket in hand, and reach forward. The goat does not move. You squeeze. A pathetic stream of milk dribbles out like the last bit of dish soap from a nearly empty bottle. You try again, slightly better. You get into a rhythm. Then the goat kicks the bucket over. You pause. The goat smirks. You retrieve the bucket, scoop what you can, and sigh the sigh of a person who once had hopes. The next goat is more compliant, perhaps sensing that your spirit has already cracked like pond ice in March. By the end, you've filled half a bucket. Not bad. Your hands are numb. Your boots are wet. Your patience has packed up and left. But you did it. Quirky tidbit. It was believed in some areas that sour-tempered milk came from milking goats or cows in a bad mood or during a fight between family members. So yes, people blamed their own marital arguments for why the cheese turned weird. Back inside, the milk is strained through cloth and added to a cauldron. Someone's making curds again. You pretend to be excited. Then comes egg collection. You're told to check the nesting boxes behind the hearth. This is code for put your hand into warm straw and hope nothing bites you. You reach in. Something pecks. You yelp. The chicken scoots away indignant. One egg is warm. You cradle it like treasure. The second one is cracked. You leave it as a lesson to the others. When you return with your offerings, half a pail of milk, 1 solid egg, and a story involving minor poultry trauma, you're greeted with approving nods. Someone even claps. You're given a slice of oat bread as thanks. You chew it for 7 minutes. It never softens, but it's yours, and you earned it with goat kicks and bravery. Then comes the final task of the morning ice chipping. Someone points to the water trough. It's frozen solid. You're handed a small axe and told don't crack the bottom. You nod like that's obvious. You kneel down, tap the top, and feel the thrum of frozen resistance. You swing. Scholarly debate moment. Some historians suggest medieval villagers chipped ice daily for water storage, especially when nearby rivers froze. Others argue they simply stored snow and let it melt indoors, or reused heated stones to keep water barrels usable. The methods varied greatly by region wealth and how desperate people were. You keep chipping. The surface yields slowly. Ice chunks fly. One hits your face. Refreshing. Eventually, a slushy puddle appears. The cows slurp it with gusto. Your fingers, however, are now frozen chopsticks. Someone hands you a cloth. You dry your hands and then tuck them deep into your sleeves, crossing your arms like a disappointed nun. Finally, you're allowed to return inside. The fire's been revived and a large pot bubbles over it. Soup, maybe, possibly more oat-related items. You sit near the flames. You don't speak. No one does. There is only warmth and the deep shared understanding among everyone here. You made it through another morning. You wrangled a goat, survived a chicken ambush, and defeated a small glacier. You, my friend, are becoming almost medieval. You've thawed just enough for your fingers to flex again when the firewood runner returns empty-handed. The door slams behind him and he throws his hands up in a combination of apology and theatrical despair. No more wood, he announces. Not even damp bits. Everyone groans softly. A toddler near the hearth dramatically flops onto a woven mat like they've just been told Christmas is canceled. You're not even mad at the reaction. You kind of feel like doing the same. But then comes the sentence you were hoping never to hear time to collecto. You blink. You look around hoping you misheard. You did not. Dung cakes, someone clarifies. For the fire. Historical fact. In many regions across medieval Europe and Asia, particularly where firewood was scarce or expensive, dried animal dung was collected and used as fuel. Dung cakes were made by hand-shaped and left to dry. They burned hot, if not pleasantly, and kept hearths alive through the coldest nights. You are handed a shallow basket and pointed toward a nearby paddock with a polite smile and no further instructions. Because really, what is there to explain? Outside, the air is thick with frost and faint whiffs of everything you're about to gather. A few villagers are already ahead of you, scooping, flattening, stacking. One is humming, another is whistling. You envy their peace. You kneel down by a recently vacated spot behind the cow. The earth is frozen, but the dung miraculously is not. It gives way beneath your stick. You scoop, press it into a rough patty shape, and lay it on a flat stone to dry. Repeat, repeat, repeat. The first 5 are awkward. The next 10 are strangely meditative. By the 20th, you've entered a dung-focused trance state. Quirky tidbit. Some households even competed over who made the best burning cakes, mixing straw hay and mud to optimize burn time. In certain Himalayan villages today, similar methods are still used with recipes passed down through generations, grandma's secret dung blend. You finish with a full basket. Your gloves are now officially forever gloves, meaning you'll never take them off again because you fear what they smell like. Someone pats your shoulder in camaraderie. You wonder if this is your life now. Back inside, the cakes are stacked near the hearth like oddly shaped loaves of very unfortunate bread. One by one, they're fed into the fire. The room fills with the telltale scent, not exactly awful, but unmistakably rustic. Smells like heat, someone says with a shrug. You sit watching the flames leap and crackle over this new fuel source. You don't ask questions anymore. You simply bask in the smoky warmth of cow assisted survival. But warmth brings its own hazards, specifically laundry. Someone decides it's warm enough to wash the household linens. You are recruited mostly because you didn't make eye contact fast enough. The process begins at the edge of the nearby stream, still frozen. You join a team of villagers wielding axes and large rocks chipping away at the ice until there's a pool wide enough to dip fabric. Your job is to carry the linens and wring them out after each rinse. You dip a tunic into the water. It stiffens instantly, like it's auditioning for a role as a popsicle. You beat it against a flat stone rinse ring repeat. It's grueling damp, and your hands go numb after 10 minutes. Then the wind picks up. You try to lift a now washed tunic. It flaps like a frozen flag. You attempt to hang it on a nearby line. It creaks. The line breaks. The tunic falls into a snowdrift. You consider just burying it and pretending it never existed. Scholarly debate break. There is ongoing discussion among historians about just how often peasants washed their clothes in winter. Some argue that heavy garments were rarely cleaned, simply aired out or brushed off, while undergarments, if owned, might be rinsed every few weeks. Others suggest steam baths or hot stones were used in wealthier homes to freshen clothes indoors. You eventually manage to hang 3 pieces of clothing. 2 stay. 1 sails off like a medieval kite, landing in the neighbor's goose pen. The geese are not pleased. You retrieve it, apologize, and vow to never volunteer for laundry again. This vow will be broken by Thursday. Back at the house, there's a reward waiting soup. Thick, hot, and shockingly almost tasty. It contains onion barley and a hint of actual seasoning. You savor every spoonful like it's a gourmet meal, because it is by current standards. You slump near the fire, exhausted and covered in damp wool and the vague scent of cow. The dung cakes are burning steadily now, and the room is comfortably warm for once. People chat. Someone strums a lyre with 3 working strings, and the mood is almost cheerful. You catch yourself smiling. It's not comfortable, it's not clean, but it's survivable. And somehow that feels like progress. You're beginning to understand that winter doesn't ask how you're doing. It assumes the answer is bad and continues anyway. And today, it's laundry day again. Yes, again. Apparently, medieval fabric has 2 settings crusty and needs washing immediately. Your tunic smells like you've been wrestling goats in it. You have. Twice. It's also stiff enough to stand on its own. You hold it up like a flag of surrender and sigh. But the real adventure isn't the washing. It's what happens after, because in a medieval winter, clean clothes quickly become frozen artwork. You begin at the stream again, the same stream that tried to bite your fingers off last time. The hole in the ice has been reopened with a few solid axe strikes, and a crowd of equally reluctant villagers surrounds it like a support group for frozen wrists. You dunk the tunic in. It hisses, almost insulted. You wring it out. Your fingers go numb within seconds. You slap the tunic against a flat stone several times, then try to shake it out. It doesn't move. It has frozen in a perfect curve, like a question mark made of damp misery. Historical fact: Winter laundry was done sparingly, if at all, during the colder months. Most garments were spot cleaned or brushed. Full washes were saved for warmer days or absolutely necessary occasions, like Lent holy feasts or after particularly messy livestock related incidents. You carry the tunic over to the drying line. There it joins several other garments, each frozen in mid flap, like they were caught in a medieval dance off. One shirt is so stiff it's propped against the house like a sculpture. Someone named it Sir Scratch-a-Lot. But the best part, drying takes days, not hours, not one gentle afternoon breeze. Days. And if it snows again, which it probably will, you get to start over. You head back to the fire grumbling and nearly slip on a patch of icy mud. A small child sees you giggles and imitates your flailing with concerning accuracy. Back indoors, a new dilemma has presented itself: your underclothes. Let's be honest, they've suffered. You're down to your last semi-clean set, and the fire is already occupied by 6 pairs of steaming socks, 2 suspiciously lumpy wool leggings, and a pair of trousers drying over a stick that keeps rotating like a medieval rotisserie. You try to claim a corner of the hearth. The woman managing sock rotation raises an eyebrow. Yours, she asks, pointing at your bundle. You nod. She scoots the socks 1 inch. A truce is formed. You prop your undergarments over a stone near the fire and pray they dry before nightfall. You can already feel your future self climbing into damp linens with a sigh so deep it might trigger an avalanche. Quirky tidbit. In wealthier households, drying racks were sometimes hung from ceilings to keep linens closer to the rising heat. Poorer families resorted to hanging clothes directly over furniture near coals or when desperate on themselves. There are records of people sleeping in wet clothes to speed drying. Speaking of desperation, you volunteer to fetch more firewood, again, because anything is better than watching steam rise from other people's socks. You head outside to the woodshed. It's more of a lean-to, really. Inside, disappointment. A few sticks, 1 log, a suspicious bundle that might be kindling or someone's cursed art project. You gather what you can and carry it back. Midway through the yard, a gust of wind lifts half the bundle. You chase it. You lose a stick to the neighbor's goose. It bites you. You apologize to it. Winter is messing with your sense of justice. Scholarly debate time. Did medieval villagers store sufficient firewood for winter, or was it always a scramble? Some historians argue that communities prepared meticulously in autumn, stacking logs in covered areas. Others suggest shortages were common, and supplemental fuels like peat straw and dung were essential to survive late winter, especially in lean years. You dump your collection by the hearth with a triumphant grunt. Someone hands you a cup of something warm. You sip. It's mead, slightly sour, possibly medicinal. You don't care. It burns pleasantly on the way down. You sit back as your underclothes begin to steam like a medieval rice cooker. Across from you, a teenager pokes at a sock with a stick, muttering a prayer that it doesn't catch fire. You look around. The house smells like wool wood smoke and faintly of turnip stew, possibly the same one from 2 days ago, now entering its 3rd life. Someone has strung a drying line overhead, and it now resembles a particularly aggressive spider web of socks and underpants. The fire crackles. The dung cakes burn steadily. A woman snores softly near the door. The pig shifts in its straw and farts loudly, which somehow adds to the ambiance. You're sore. You're damp. You may never feel truly dry again, but your clothes are slowly becoming wearable. Your belly is not empty, and the house is just warm enough to make you feel, dare you say it, cozy. You pull your damp but drying tunic around you, lean back, and close your eyes. If this is laundry day, you think, then maybe you're getting used to it. You're jolted awake by the clang of a bell, not a cheerful bell, not the kind that says dinner is ready. This is the hollow, doom-laden clang of a church bell in winter, a sound that somehow manages to feel both cold and judgmental. You sit up. Your tunic has dried enough to be wearable, which is fortunate because someone just announced Mass in 20 minutes. You nod slowly, trying to pretend this information doesn't hurt your soul. No one's skipping it. Not because they're especially devout, although some are, but because church is the only building in the village, larger than a hut and slightly less drafty than standing naked in the wind. You fumble into your clothes, which are now stiff, but at least smell marginally better than you do. You wrap your scarf, don your crusty boots, and shuffle out the door with a parade of equally stiff, equally tired villagers, all dressed in 50 shades of grayish brown. Outside, it's snowing again, the kind of snow that feels personal, sharp sideways, and unapologetic. The path to the church has been trampled into a slushy mess of straw ice, and what you hope is just mud. The church looms at the edge of the village, its stone walls crusted in frost. No stained glass here, just tiny windows, barely bigger than your hand, made of translucent horn or oiled parchment. You step inside. Immediately, you're greeted by two sensations: the scent of old wax and the immediate realization that it's colder inside than outside. Historical fact: medieval churches, especially in small villages, were rarely heated. Stone walls retained cold, and congregants were expected to bring their own warmth-layered cloaks, body heat, and in some cases hot stones or small embers carried in pots wrapped in cloth. Comfort was not the point. Reverence was. You sit on a wooden bench that feels like it was carved by someone who hated sitting. The surface is hard cold and entirely disinterested in your posterior. You shift. You regret it. The wood creaks in protest. Around you, others are settling in. A man sneezes into his sleeve. A woman unwraps a damp scarf and mutters a prayer under her breath. Somewhere, a child tries to start a whisper war with their sibling, only to be silenced by a look that could wither crops. The priest enters his breath, visible as he begins the sermon. His voice echoes through the stone nave like a reluctant ghost. You understand about a third of it, mostly the parts involving sin, humility, and sheep. You glance up at the ceiling. It's high vaulted and home to at least 3 pigeons who don't seem bothered by the cold. You envy their resilience. Then comes the kneeling part. The floor is stone, frozen stone. You kneel. You immediately regret kneeling. Your knees file a formal complaint. Quirky tidbit. Some devout parishioners brought their own kneeling pads, basically scraps of cloth or hay-stuffed cushions. These were prized possessions, often shared within families or passed down. Others used folded cloaks, children, or whatever was warm and willing. You consider folding your scarf under your knees. It slides out instantly. You spend the next 5 minutes trying to balance reverence with basic survival instincts. At one point, you sneeze loudly. Everyone hears. You attempt to make it sound like a solemn cough. It does not succeed. The sermon ends, mercifully. Then come the hymns, low, droning chants, sung by voices so cold they sound like they've been refrigerated. You join in, vaguely mouthing the words, hoping no one notices. No one does. Everyone is too focused on keeping their teeth from chattering in rhythm. Scholarly debate moment. Did villagers attend church mostly for spiritual reasons, or was it a social obligation tied to feudal law and community order? Some historians argue that mass attendance was enforced by both lords and clergy, while others suggest that churches functioned as vital hubs offering warmth news and even grain storage in emergencies. As the final amen echoes through the frozen rafters, the villagers begin to file out, stiff and silent. Your legs crackle like frozen branches as you stand. You limp toward the door, which now looks like the glowing exit to a slightly warmer purgatory. Outside, the snow has stopped. The sky is a dull sheet of gray. Your nose is bright red. Your ears feel like they've been replaced with carved potatoes. But something about being outside again feels better. The air is moving. You can blink without feeling guilty. And most importantly, you're allowed to talk. You join the slow procession back to the house. No one rushes. There's no point. The day is long, the snow is deep, and your knees are still considering a mutiny. Back inside, someone has relit the fire. The pot over the hearth is bubbling with what looks like onion and lentils, possibly yesterday's onion, possibly tomorrow's too. No one complains. You peel off your boots, stretch your aching legs, and sit cross-legged near the flames. You made it through a medieval church service in winter. Your reward: lukewarm soup, a fire fueled by cow dung, and the vague sense that your kneecaps may never fully recover. And yet you're weirdly proud, because even though your feet are still frozen and your sinuses might never be the same, you've survived another ancient ritual, and in this world that counts for something. By midday, you're warm enough to remove your scarf. This is a rare and dangerous luxury, often accompanied by bold statements, like "I think the fire's finally doing something," or "maybe I'll hang up my cloak for a bit." You are immediately handed a bed warmer. It's a metal pan on a long handle with a lid and a faint smell of soot and something vaguely porky. The old man who gives it to you says, "Careful, don't set the mattress on fire again." Then he walks away without further explanation. You hold it up like an alien object. Several children eye it reverently. Historical fact: bed warmers were common in colder medieval and early modern households. Typically, they were metal pans filled with hot coals, inserted between layers of blankets to preheat straw mattresses before bedtime. They worked but came with risks. Poorly contained coals could smolder or ignite bedding, and there are records of more than a few toasty tragedies. You are now the designated mattress technician. Someone points toward the sleeping corner and hands you a lump of straw wrapped in burlap. You assume this is a mattress. You gingerly lift a blanket, insert the pan, and wiggle it around like you're roasting marshmallows made of hay and fear. A faint puff of smoke escapes. You yank the pan out. The straw is fine, slightly singed, One child cheers. Another looks disappointed, perhaps hoping for a little fire based entertainment. You try again, this time slower, gentler, like coaxing warmth from the gods of carbon. The mattress is warm. Success. You beam with pride and move on to the next bed. This continues for half an hour with you becoming increasingly skilled at the art of smoke, but not flames. You begin to fancy yourself a connoisseur of bed warming angles. You even name the pan Sir Toast-a-Lot, quirky tidbit. Some families used heated stones instead of bed warmers. Stones were placed in or near the hearth, then wrapped in cloth or straw and placed under the covers. Others used pigs. Yes, actual pigs. The phrase three dog night has similar origins if you needed 3 dogs in bed. It was that cold. Having warmed 5 beds and only lightly scorched one, you retire from your new role with dignity and smoked pant cuffs. You return to the hearth where a woman is carefully stirring something in a small pot. It smells promising. Mulled ale, she says, offering you a wooden cup. You sip. It's warm, sweet, a bit spicy, and tastes slightly like someone dropped a clove into a shoe. But in this world, it's delicious. You sip again. Then she adds pine needles. You stare at the pot. She shrugs. Scholarly debate time. There's speculation among food historians that aromatic herbs, including pine rosemary and even evergreen needles, were occasionally steeped in winter drinks for medicinal reasons. Some sources mention pine needle infusions being used as mild cold remedies, though documentation is spotty. What's clear, flavor standards were negotiable in winter. You keep sipping. Whether it's the warmth, the clove, or the faint sense that you've just drunk part of a Christmas tree, you feel vaguely comforted. Now you sweat it out, the woman says, smiling. That's how we avoid winter fever. You are now sweating, partially because of the drink, partially because the fire has been suddenly enthusiastic. Or perhaps you're just afraid of being handed another medieval appliance. Then comes the next bit of survival advice: hot stones in your socks. You blink. A teenager beside you pulls out 2 flat rocks from the hearth. He wraps them in cloth, shoves them into his boots, and grins like a genius. You are handed your own stones. They're warm, not hot, not quite burning. But definitely, if you leave this on your ankle too long, you'll smell toast warm. You follow suit, cloth, foot sock, boot. Your toes feel joy for the first time since arriving. Actual, tangible, tingling joy. You smile. It's a little weird. Quirky hack of the day. Heated stones were a medieval go-to for keeping warm at night. Sometimes slipped into beds, sometimes into boots, or even tucked into belts. They were the original hand warmers, reusable, sustainable, and only mildly dangerous. You sit by the fire with warmed socks and mulled tree juice, staring into the flames like someone who has finally made peace with their wool-wrapped fate. You are perhaps comfortable, but nothing lasts forever. The door bursts open. A young man stomps in snow-covered and wide-eyed. Storm's coming, he says. Everyone sighs collectively and in unison. It's the sound of 14 people all remembering that no matter how clever your rocks are, winter is still bigger, colder, and more stubborn. Someone starts piling up blankets. Others check the roof for leaks. The bed warmer makes another appearance. You finish your drink, pull your scarf back on, and check that your stones are still warm. The storm hasn't arrived yet, but it's close. You can smell it in the air, something sharp, metallic like wind sharpening its claws. Still, you're ready, sort of, a little, because tonight your bed will be warm, your socks will be stone powered, and if the snow tries anything fancy, you've got a goat who owes you a favor. And that's probably as good as it gets. The wind arrives just after nightfall, not a polite breeze or even a rude gust. This is storm wind, the kind that knocks shutters loose, hurls snow sideways, and makes you wonder if the sky is trying to file a complaint directly through your walls. The house groans like a ship at sea. The roof creaks ominously. You wrap your cloak tighter, adjust your scarf, and scoot closer to the hearth where the fire does its best to act brave. The goat beside you looks concerned. You feel bonded. Dinner is whatever was left in the stew pot, an unidentifiable collection of barley onion and what might be lentils, possibly pebbles. Either way, you chew carefully. Then someone passes around a clay jug. The contents are lukewarm, slightly fizzy, and carry a scent best described as barn adjacent. You take a sip. It's ale. Technically, historical fact, mulled ale or warmed mead was a common evening drink during winter, often served with spices like cinnamon cloves or nutmeg if available. It helped villagers relax and, more importantly, stay warm. Most ales were low alcohol small beers, safe to drink when water might not be and could be heated directly by the fire. This particular version tastes like it was brewed in a bucket that once held turnips. Still, it's warm, and that counts for a lot. After your sip, someone tosses a few herbs into the communal jug, rosemary maybe, or sage, possibly dried weeds that looked promising. The older woman next to you leans in and whispers, "Keeps the phlegm out." You nod respectfully, though you're unsure what your phlegm status is at the moment. As the storm howls louder, conversation turns to ghost stories. Of course, you didn't ask for ghost stories. No one does. But they arrive on schedule, part of the nightly entertainment, like improv theater, but colder. The first tale is about a man who froze solid in the woods and returned every winter to rattle the shutters and curse whoever drank his last bottle of cider. The second involves a haunted icicle that drips blood and whispers your name if you stay awake past midnight. You smile politely, huddled in your corner of the straw. Everyone else listens with delight. One boy adds sound effects. The fire flickers as if on cue. Quirky tidbit. Folklore during long winters served many functions: entertainment, moral instruction, and frankly survival. Tales about haunted forests or cursed snowstorms weren't just for thrills. They also discouraged risky behavior, like wandering off alone in bad weather or touching mysterious glowing mushrooms. You're starting to feel sleepy when someone announces time for the good stuff. They reveal a small ceramic jar, open it dramatically, and the room leans in. It's honeyed spice cake, a miracle. 2 fingers, thick, dark, and sticky with crushed seeds on top. It's cut into modest chunks and passed around like holy relics. You bite in. It's chewy, sweet, spiced with something, possibly caraway, maybe fennel. You don't care. It's delicious. Scholarly debate moment. Some researchers argue that even the poorest medieval households occasionally splurged on special winter treats. These were usually sweetened with honey or dried fruit and reserved for feast days, weddings, or midwinter morale boosts. Others argue that such indulgences were rare, more common among the merchant class or clergy. Regardless, food historians agree anything sweet during winter was a cause for celebration. You savor your bite. The goat eyes you jealously. You offer it a crumb. It sniffs, turns away, picky. The storm beats harder against the walls now. The fire blazes in defiance. Blankets are passed around. Someone volunteers to sleep near the door in case it blows in again, they say, like that's a normal Tuesday. You crawl into your straw bed, armed with one warm stone, two blankets, and your nearly dry socks. The room smells like smoke honey wool and optimism because no one has coughed in 3 hours. A young girl sings a lullaby from the corner. You don't know the words. It sounds like a melody meant to keep snow away, or at least politely delay it until morning. You close your eyes. The roof still creaks, but it holds. The fire pops gently. You feel your body relax, limbs sinking into straw. Even your knees, usually so dramatic, decide to behave. You're not warm exactly, but you're not cold, and that's everything. Because on a night like this, in the middle of a medieval winter storm, with wind howling like a hungry wolf, and everyone in one room listening to lullabies and chewing spicy cake crumbs, this is as good as it gets. And you know what? It's not bad. You wake up to silence, which is more alarming than noise. The wind has stopped. No howling, no banging shutters, just a heavy cotton-wrapped stillness that presses against the walls like a held breath. The fire is down to coals. The goat is asleep. The pig is snoring gently like a furry accordion. You blink at the ceiling. Some snowflakes have made their way through a crack in the thatch. They drift down, slow and theatrical, landing on your blanket with poetic indifference. You flick one off. It's replaced by another. You sit up carefully, wrapped in your blankets like a medieval burrito. Your bones make quiet protest noises. Your knees continue their tragic symphony. The room is still. Everyone is asleep or pretending to be. You step over 2 feet, one dog, and a sleeping child to reach the door. You open it, and there it is. The storm's aftermath. Everything is buried. The yard, the road, the neighbor's goose pen, even the compost pile mercifully. The snow is knee-deep and shimmering. No footprints, no slush. Just a smooth, glistening carpet of quiet doom. You take a cautious step outside. Your boot disappears instantly. Your sock feels betrayed. You take another step and instantly regret it. Historical fact. Heavy snowfall often isolated medieval villages for days or even weeks. Roads vanished, trade halted, people relied entirely on preserved food stores, dried fuel, and each other. Travel became dangerous, and local survival instincts kicked into high gear, especially in mountainous or forested regions where snowdrifts could reach shoulder height. You go back inside. Snow is not something you face on an empty stomach. Someone's already stoking the fire. The clink of iron and the whoosh of bellows signal the start of another day in a winter that clearly has no plans to leave. Time to pay your dues, someone says, as they pass you a bowl. You glance inside. It's turnips, again, mashed this time, possibly aged in sadness. You eat it without comment. Then comes the knock. Not a hard knock, just a polite tap, tap, tap on the wooden door. The kind that says, Hello, it's me, Taxes. You watch as the village steward enters. He's wrapped in a fur cloak that probably belonged to three separate animals. His hat is tilted with official exhaustion. He carries a ledger and a pouch. Behind him are two men with shovels. We're collecting the winter dues, he says, with the enthusiasm of a man who has already had his daily quota of turnips and frostbite. You look confused. So does everyone else. Then the old woman from the hearth gestures toward a small pile in the corner offerings: barley, some dried apples, a pouch of wool scraps, a lump of cheese so hard it could stop a siege. You're expected to contribute. You rummage through your belongings. You find a nearly edible crust of bread and half a dried plum from 2 days ago. You add them solemnly to the pile. The steward inspects the offerings, grunts in satisfaction, and jots something down in his book. Quirky tidbit feudal dues weren't just yearly taxes. In some regions, winter payments were expected in the form of grain cloth or preserved goods to help support lords' monasteries or communal stores. These winter gifts were also used to curry favor or fulfill spiritual obligations tied to seasonal feast days. The steward tips his hat, nods once, and leaves. The two shovelers glance around the room, clearly disappointed no one offered them soup, and follow. You exhale. Congratulations, you've officially paid your winter taxes in turnip crumbs and social discomfort. But the day's not over. Next, it's time for snow clearing. Not shovel your driveway kind of clearing. No. This is we must find the road before we all forget it ever existed. You're handed a wooden spade and directed toward the edge of the village. You join a line of people hacking, tossing, stomping, and slipping their way through the snowy landscape. Children follow behind, packing the tossed snow into crude fortresses. One builds a snowman with 3 eyes and a chicken feather mohawk. No one questions it. You chip away at the path. The snow is stubborn, heavy. Your arms burn. Your feet are cold. Your cheeks are tingling. Still, you keep going because that's what people do when it snows like this. Scholarly debate moment. Some scholars believe medieval villages had informal snow brigades, neighbors organizing snow clearing to maintain access to food stores, wells, and places of worship. Others argue that in many parts of Europe, heavy snow simply meant hunkering down for weeks at a time, letting the snow compact naturally until passable. By the time you return to the house, you are a human snowball. Your cloak is crusted. Your boots are puddles. Your nose is somewhere between frozen and philosophical. Inside, the fire is roaring. Someone has unearthed a pot of stewed apples and is ladling it into wooden bowls like a saint. You are handed one. You nearly cry. It's sweet, warm, laced with cinnamon and a whisper of cloves. You don't care where they found the spices. You just eat. Outside, the sun peeks out weak but present. The snow glitters. Inside, the room is warm, filled with the sound of slurping quiet laughter and the occasional pig grunt. And for the first time in a while, you feel kind of okay. Not great, but okay, which in a medieval winter is a win. By late afternoon, the sky turns a pale blue-gray that says, "Don't get too comfortable." The sun makes a brief appearance, bounces off the snow like it's trying to escape, and disappears behind a curtain of lazy, drifting clouds. It's the kind of light that makes everything look beautiful until you remember your toes are still damp from snow shoveling and your knees click when you sit. You're finally dry warm and halfway through a bowl of leftover stewed apples when a girl bursts in with a grin and a stick. She shouts a word that sounds like cracklebone, and half the room cheers. You raise an eyebrow. Someone nudges you. It's time they whisper. We go sledding. You blink. Sledding. They nod, eyes gleaming. The steep hill by the tree line. Everyone goes. You consider the facts. It's below freezing. You're tired, and your boots still smell like goat. But this is the most excitement you've seen in 3 days that didn't involve livestock sneezing on you. You grab your cloak and follow. Historical fact. While not exactly sledding in the modern sense, medieval children and even adults did use sled-like objects, boards, animal hides, even large flat bones to slide down icy slopes in winter. It was recreation transportation and occasionally a rite of passage or an impromptu trip to the local bone-setting wise woman. The sleds turn out to be planks, door panels, and one suspiciously smooth shovel. You are handed a worn piece of curved wood, possibly from a barrel, possibly from someone's roof. The children go first. One shoots down the slope with a joyful scream cloak flapping like a heroic cape. Another spins sideways halfway down, crashes into a snowdrift, and comes up laughing. You watch, then settle onto your board. Your knees protest. Your sense of survival weeps, but it's too late. Someone pushes you, and you're off. At first, you move slowly, gracefully. Then the slope gets steeper. You pick up speed. Your breath catches. The snow sprays up into your face. You are a medieval comet fueled by momentum and questionable decisions. You hit a small bump and leave the ground for a glorious half-second. You land with a soft thud and continue spinning gently, finally coming to a stop beside a bush full of confused birds. You lie back in the snow laughing. Your tunic is damp. Your teeth are cold, but your soul is warm. Quirky tidbit. Sliding games in winter weren't just for fun. Frozen rivers were often used for travel, and sleds hauled goods and firewood. In some northern European regions, pig-greased shoes or icy wooden skates were used to glide across surfaces, giving rise to early forms of skating and sliding sports. You trek back up the hill, breath-fogging legs wobbling. By the third trip, you're officially hooked. Eventually, the sun dips low, and someone announces that noses are turning purple. Time to go. Back at the house, it's cozy chaos. Snowy boots stomp in. Wet mittens hang from hooks. Everyone talks at once. Who wiped out, who won the longest slide, and who might have accidentally invented a new sport by spinning down the hill backward while screaming poetry. You strip off your outer layers and settle near the fire. The pig curls up beside you like a slightly judgmental footstool. Someone passes around a tin of roasted hazelnuts, still warm from the hearth. You crack one open and savor the smoky crunch. Scholarly debate moment. Winter games and communal activities are often underrepresented in historical records, but recent archaeological and folkloric studies suggest that festivals, sled races, and even snowball tournaments were not uncommon in medieval villages, especially as ways to fight off cabin fever and reaffirm community bonds. A man near the fire strums a one-stringed instrument and hums a tune. It's slightly off-key and mostly about a cow named Margaret, but everyone listens like it's a bardic masterpiece. The room softens. Even the wind outside has quieted, as if pausing to listen. You sip warm cider feet, propped up on a log cheeks, still red from snow and laughter. Someone yawns. The pig sighs. Today you didn't fix roofs. You didn't gather dung. You didn't chase chickens or chip ice from a bucket with your bare hands. Today you just slid down a hill and forgot briefly that everything itched and your boots leaked. And that's worth remembering. You've begun to develop a theory. Medieval houses are alive. Not in a whimsical fairy tale sense, but in a grumpy, creaky, chronically cold way, like an old uncle who complains about drafts and has opinions about soup. Tonight your house is sulking. The shutters rattle, the floorboards groan, and the fire has developed a disturbing wheeze. Someone swears they saw smoke come into the room from the chimney. No one questions it. You're trying to sleep, wrapped in your usual cocoon of scratchy wool and faintly damp socks when you hear it. Skittering, tiny feet across the beams, then above your straw mattress, then somewhere under it. You freeze. You listen. There are rodents in the rafters. You don't panic, not yet. Rodents are common, you've been told. They're part of the experience, someone said, like they were talking about a spa treatment. You roll over. Something rolls with you. You sit up. Someone across the room groans. Another person turns over and mumbles something that sounds suspiciously like, "Don't name it this time." You light a small tallow candle. The flickering flame reveals nothing dramatic, just shadows, straw, and your own increasingly suspicious blanket. You peek above. Nothing. Then something small scurries along the rafter. It stops. It stares. A mouse, maybe a rat. Definitely not imaginary. It's holding a crumb. Possibly your crumb. You sigh. Historical fact. Rodents were part of daily life in most medieval homes, especially in colder seasons. With food stored indoors, warm nooks available, and limited pest control, rats and mice were nearly impossible to avoid. Some households kept cats when they could afford to feed them. Others used traps, ferrets, or simply accepted the skittering status quo. You lie back down, slowly pulling your blanket over your face. The mouse resumes its patrol. From somewhere in the wall comes a soft squeak. You pretend it's a lullaby. Then the scratching starts beneath your straw mattress. You sit up again. You lift one corner. Two small black eyes blink up at you. You don't scream. You sigh. Again. You carefully move your bed a foot to the left. The rodent disappears with the elegance of someone who has done this dance before. You stare at the wall for a long time, thinking about everything you've accomplished in life to arrive at this moment. Then someone tells a joke. Out of the dark, a voice says, "Heard the mouse is applying for residency. Wants his own blanket." A chuckle. Then another voice. "Better him than Marcy." She snores. "Do not," says a woman. You do. Even the pig left. You laugh. You can't help it. The tension breaks like a crust of snow underfoot. A wave of shared laughter rolls across the room like a warm blanket made of sarcasm. Quirky tidbit. In some regions, mice and rats were given nicknames by villagers. Barn Thomas Cheesebiter and Little Gray Sneak appear in oral folk tales, reflecting a kind of reluctant camaraderie between humans and the pests they couldn't quite defeat. Eventually, someone lights the hearth again. A few dung cakes are tossed on. The flames sputter but catch. The smell is familiar now, earthy sharp but cozy in its own way. You sit beside it, staring into the embers. The rodent has vanished, probably to its mouse palace in the ceiling, where it's currently bragging about the crumb it stole from your pocket. You hold your hands near the fire. They're dry, cracked, but functional. Your knees complain as you sit cross-legged, but the warmth outweighs the ache. A man near the hearth begins humming, a low, slow tune with no words. Someone joins in. Then someone taps rhythm on an overturned bucket. Before you know it, the room has drifted into a quiet, sleepy chant, a rhythm of breath, hum, and heartbeat. No one's quite awake. No one's quite asleep. Just people sharing heat, space, straw, mouse anecdotes, scholarly debate moment. While rodent infestations are often seen as purely negative, some historians point out the frequency of rodent references in medieval folklore and daily life records suggests a cultural adaptation. Rather than relentless warfare, there was often reluctant tolerance, at least, until the rodents got into the stored grain. You return to your straw pile now, rodent-free for the moment. Your blanket smells faintly of smoke and onion, but it's warm. Your scarf is wrapped around your feet. Your hot stone has gone cool, but not yet cold. You lie back. Above something scrabbles gently on a beam. You smile. Good night, little gray, sneak you whisper. And this time you fall asleep faster, because if even the mice can survive the medieval winter, so can you. You wake to a smell that can only be described as bone broth with ambition. It seeps into your dreams and pulls you gently back into the waking world like a savory rope. Your stomach, having spent the night muttering to itself about the rodent situation, perks up with curiosity. You sit up. A pot hangs over the fire steam, rising lazily in the cold morning air. Inside is a concoction of dubious origin but promising aroma, thin broth, floating vegetable bits, and something large, round, and very beige bobbing in the middle. What is it, you ask? A boy stirs the pot proudly and announces boar bone surprise. You nod like that answers everything. You join the others at the fire. Each person is handed a bowl, wooden warm to the touch and slightly warped. Yours has a chip shaped like a crescent moon. Charming. You dip your spoon into the broth. The first bite is mostly water and turnip essence. The second, however, hits something magical, a sliver of meat. Possibly actual boar, possibly ambitious rabbit. Doesn't matter. You chew like it's the last bite on earth. Historical fact. Bone-based soups were a staple of winter diets for medieval peasants. Meat was rare, but bones boiled long enough produced rich, nourishing broths. People used every part of the animal, often reboiling bones for days. Herbs, onions, leeks, and root vegetables rounded out the dish when available. Broth was both food and medicine. You slurp in rhythm with everyone else. The sound is oddly soothing. Steam fogs up your face. You feel your spine slowly unfold like a reluctant scroll. Then the trading begins. One woman offers a heel of rye bread in exchange for another person's slice of carrot. A child slides over a chestnut in exchange for the floaty part of someone's soup. You catch yourself eyeing a particularly plump potato piece in someone else's bowl and realize you've become part of the barter economy of broth. You offer your bread crust for a spoonful of actual meat. The trade is made. You savor it like a nobleman sampling roasted swan. Quirky tidbits. In some villages, soup became a form of currency during winter months. Recipes were passed down like family heirlooms, and the richer the broth, the more social value it held. Some even added pebbles or bones not for flavor, but to suggest flavor to the imagination, a medieval version of food styling. Once the bowls are empty, people begin prepping for the daily grind. You're assigned ash spreading. This sounds mysterious and vaguely magical. It is not. It involves scooping ash from the hearth, carrying it outside, and scattering it over the icy yard to reduce slipping. It's gritty, slightly warm, and flies back into your face at the slightest breeze. You spread ash on the footpath, on the woodpile, on the spot where old Jorand fell last week and blamed it on ghosts. You leave extra there just in case. As you return inside, the wind picks up and snow begins to fall again, slow, soft, and ceaseless. You step into the room and find it transformed. Blankets have been strung like low-hanging canopies. Someone has stacked hay bales into little nooks. A girl is laying pine branches near the hearth, filling the room with a sharp foresty smell that makes your nose tingle. What's going on, you ask? Storm's coming again, someone replies. A long one. So the house is going into siege mode. The windows are shuttered tighter. Cracks in the walls are stuffed with extra straw. Buckets of water are brought in just in case the well freezes solid. A pot of soup is left to simmer endlessly. Everyone is preparing to spend the next few days indoors. Together, scholarly debate moment accounts vary on how medieval families adapted to extended snowstorms. Some sources suggest they huddled for days in small groups, engaging in quiet crafts, mending, carving, spinning. Others emphasize communal storytelling games and making merry with what few resources remained. One thing's consistent: they didn't go out unless they absolutely had to. You take up a place near the hearth and are handed a needle and a sock with more holes than fabric. Patch it, says the woman next to you. You'll want it when the snow starts whispering. You nod as if that makes sense. You begin threading the needle with frozen fingers. It's clumsy. The sock resists, perhaps out of pride. You stab your thumb twice. The pig watches, unimpressed. Eventually you find a rhythm. Stitch, pull, knot, breathe. The snow outside begins to tap the roof. The wind hums. The soup bubbles. The room smells of pine onions and warm feet. You've been here for days. You've fetched water, gathered dung-chipped ice, wrangled rodents, bartered for soup, and been kicked by a goat. Your toes still tingle. Your cloak smells like smoke, and your back has developed a consistent complaint. And yet, you're warm, you're full, you're not alone. The sock is fixed. You slip it on and feel oddly triumphant. Tomorrow the storm will howl, the house will creak, someone will burn the stew, but tonight you've got soup in your belly, a patched sock on your foot, and a quiet house full of people breathing together through the cold. And that's enough. The storm arrives in the middle of the night. No polite warning, no slow build-up, just a sudden roar like a dragon made of wind slamming into the village from all directions. You wake to the sound of shutters, flapping beams creaking, and snow pelting the roof like 1,000 angry moths. The fire is out. Again. Of course. You huddle deeper into your blankets. Someone nearby mutters something that sounds like St. Hubert, preserve us, and rolls over. The pig, remarkably unfazed, is snoring. You envy its blissful ignorance. Morning is a formality. There's no sunrise, just a gradual lightening of the gray. The air inside the house is cold enough to store cheese. You pull your cloak tighter and shuffle over to the hearth, where someone is gently coaxing a few pitiful embers back to life using a bellows, an entire lung's worth of breath, and possibly prayer. You join the huddle. Everyone moves slowly, like their limbs forgot how joints are supposed to work. Conversation is minimal. Coffee does not exist. Hope is rationed. You're assigned to crumb duty. This sounds fake, but no, it's real today. You'll be sifting through bread crusts and dried porridge chunks to rehydrate and reshape them into something that can be passed off as food. Someone hands you a bowl of hardened biscuit shards and a wooden pestle. You begin to mash, add water, stir, and shape the resulting paste into lumpy gray patties. Congratulations! You've invented griddle gloops. Historical fact: in harsh winters, nothing was wasted. Stale bread was soaked, mashed, fried, or reboiled into stews. Cold porridge was sliced and fried. Even beer dregs were added to pottage. Dishes like frumenty or bread mash were staples, combining leftover grain and whatever fat or broth was available. You press your gloops into a hot skillet over the hearth. They sizzle, kind of. The smell is faintly sour, but at least warm. You serve them to the group. No one is thrilled, but no one complains either. High praise in medieval culinary terms. After breakfast, the cabin turns into a hive of quiet activity. No one's going outside today, not in this blizzard. So it's time for what people in the Middle Ages did when trapped indoors during storms, absolutely anything to keep from going insane. One woman spins wool, another sharpens a knife while staring into the middle distance. A boy tries to teach the goat to bow. The goat pretends not to understand. You're handed a blunt tool and a chunk of wood. Whittle, someone says. You've never whittled. You stare at the wood. It stares back. You carve. You produce a small pile of wood shavings and what may be the world's ugliest spoon. Someone compliments your abstract approach. You pretend it's intentional. Quirky tidbit. During long winters, crafts weren't just hobbies, they were essential. Wool was spun baskets, woven spoons, carved nets mended, and tools repaired. It kept hands busy and minds calm. Many medieval superstitions even held that idle hands invited bad luck, especially during storms. Someone starts singing, a low, rhythmic work song about planting beans and losing boots in the mud. Another joins in, then another. Soon, everyone is humming or tapping. You clap along slightly off beat. No one cares. Later, someone suggests a game. Name the saint, they say, producing a small wooden token. I describe the miracle, you guess the name. You quickly learn that every saint has either cured a cow, regrew a finger, or appeared in a loaf of bread. You get 3 correct and are awarded a scrap of dried apple. It tastes like victory. Scholarly debate moment. In winter, communal memory games and storytelling often took center stage. Some monasteries used these storms as opportunities for scriptural memorization or riddle contests. Folk households leaned toward riddles, singing contests, and oral storytelling, all tools for education, entertainment, and preserving sanity during long indoor weeks. By midday, the wind outside is still roaring. Snowflakes drift down through the chimney every so often, like tiny icy messengers, reminding you who's boss. You stoke the fire, adjust the soup pot, and share your spoon with a toddler who insists yours is luckier. Lunch is mystery stew. No one asks what's in it. Everyone eats it, that's the rule. You spend the afternoon helping repair a chair, not because anyone particularly needs it fixed, but because doing something is the official village policy against cabin fever. You pound pegs, tighten ropes, add a cushion of straw. It creaks when sat on but doesn't collapse. Victory. As the sun vanishes again behind endless clouds, the house quiets. The goat finally bows. A cheer goes up. The boy bows back. Everyone claps. You consider nominating the goat for mayor. That evening dinner is more griddle gloops and boiled greens. Someone swears they spotted a sliver of bacon. You search your bowl. You find imagination. You're tired. But it's not the ache of outdoor labor. It's the warm fatigue of having kept boredom at bay in a snowbound world with nothing but spoon songs and soup. You crawl into your straw bed. The roof holds. The fire glows. And as the wind wails, one last time outside, you feel something surprising. Contentment. Because even in the middle of a storm, in a house full of goats, gloops, and ghosts of warmth, you made it through the day with a full belly and a very questionable spoon. And tomorrow, you might try to carve a fork. You awake to a strange sensation light. Actual natural light pouring in through the oiled cloth window, slits like a divine visitation. For a moment you think you've died and gone to the pearly gates of St. Sockworm. But no, that's just sunshine. You sit up. The house is quiet except for the gentle bubbling of a stew pot and the occasional creak of wood stretching itself awake after a long night under siege. Someone has opened the door. A rectangle of golden white brightness cuts through the smoky gloom of the room. You hobble toward it, cloak dragging behind you like a heroic cape, and step outside. Snow, still everywhere, but now it sparkles. The wind is gone, the sky is blue, actual blue, and the air, while cold, no longer stabs your face like a spiteful icicle. You take a deep breath. It tastes like chimney soot pine and faintly of goat, but you savor it anyway. Others emerge one by one, blinking like animals leaving hibernation. The toddler waddles out in a too-big cloak, immediately falls into a snowdrift, and laughs hysterically. A woman throws her arms wide and declares, "The chickens live." Historical fact. After long storms, medieval villagers would emerge cautiously to assess damage check on animals and if lucky stretch aching limbs in sunlight. These short breaks in weather were golden opportunities for fetching water, gathering wood, and shaking out linens. They were also brief and often misleading. You're assigned roof patrol. You squint. What? Someone points at the house, which now appears to be wearing a 3-foot thick hat of snow. Gotta knock that off before it collapses. You're handed a long stick, more of a pole, or perhaps a medieval javelin. Up the ladder you go again, slipping once, saving yourself by clinging to a protruding rafter, like a squirrel in crisis. At the top, you begin the noble process of thumping the snow off the roof. It's surprisingly satisfying. Every shove sends a mini avalanche sliding down the thatch. Below the chickens, scatter like popcorn. One child tries to catch falling chunks like it's a gift from the sky. You pause halfway up. The view is incredible. Snow covered rooftops, patches of steam rising from chimneys, footprints forming wobbly trails in every direction. A lone goat staring into the distance as if pondering the concept of time. You thump the rest of the roof clear and climb down to applause from exactly one person. It's the child. They've fashioned a snow hat from your fallen roof bits. Back inside, it's time for bathing. You freeze. You'd heard whispers, rumors, but you never thought you'd actually witness the medieval winter bath. A tub is dragged from storage, more of a large barrel cut in half. Someone fills it halfway with water warmed in kettles. Steam rises faint but real. You are second in line. The first bather climbs out looking reborn, pink-cheeked, slightly boiled, and giddy. You're handed a bucket. You toss the dirty water out the back and refill the tub. Then you climb in. It's tepid, somewhere between pleasantly warm and did someone already use this? Still your muscles sigh. Your back unknots. You have not been this clean or this suspicious of your own bathwater in days. Quirky tidbit. Bathing in medieval winter was rare but not unheard of. Many used dry washing with cloths and herbal powders. Communal tubs, if used, were shared in rotation with fresh hot water, added for the rich lukewarm tops-ups for everyone else. Cleanliness was subjective. Warmth, however, was sacred. You wash quickly, aware of the next person eyeing the tub like a hawk watching its prey. Afterward, you dry off with a stiff linen rag dress in your now mostly clean clothes and feel reborn. You emerge from the corner, glowing with mild dignity and a faint scent of pine ash. The rest of the afternoon is pleasant. People venture out to check the well unfrozen. Others go collect more wood. Someone actually finds a handful of mushrooms under a tree stump. You stare at them with awe. Lunch is a triumph leftover stew with real chunks of meat, hard cheese, and even a bit of mustard scraped from a jar that probably predates the current monarch. The children build a snow fortress. The dog joins the enemy's side. It is chaos. The adults gather to mend tools and whisper about whether the river will thaw early this year. You nod knowingly, though you have absolutely no idea what the signs are. Scholarly debate moment. While medieval winters were harsh, they also created pockets of communal calm and cooperation. Many winter tasks, mending gear, repairing roofs, maintaining tools, brought villagers together. Some scholars argue these long indoor stretches were crucial to reinforcing social bonds and oral traditions. Others claim they simply prevented people from strangling each other out of boredom. You end the day sitting near the fire, warming your socks again, sipping thin ale again, and wondering if this might just be the rhythm of winter life. Not glamorous, not easy, but shared and survivable. Even with the mushrooms, this morning there is a strange quiet in the village. Not from snow, it's not falling, but from the kind of stillness that says something has run out. That something you quickly learn is patience. The villagers are tense. No one says it, but the soup has gotten thinner. The firewood pile is worryingly low. A teenager is trying to make tea from boiled hay and pretending it's a new recipe. The goat looks at everyone like it knows something we don't. You sit near the hearth and chew on a piece of dried bread so hard it might qualify as gravel. You've lost one molar to this lifestyle, and you're dangerously close to sacrificing another. Someone mutters, "Time to hunt." Everyone freezes, and just like that, it's happening. A hunting party is assembled, 4 villagers with varying levels of confidence, one old hound named Rollo, and you, because you made eye contact at the wrong time again. You're handed a stick, a spear they call it. You're not convinced. Historical fact. Winter hunting was a risky but essential survival tactic. Game was scarce, and animals like rabbits, wild boar, or even deer could be difficult to track or catch in snow. But a successful hunt could feed a village for days. Tools included bows, spears, and traps, often passed down through generations. And dogs, when available, were invaluable. You set out into the woods, each footstep a crunch in the fresh snow. Rollo bounds ahead, snout down, tail wagging like this is the best day of his life. You, meanwhile, are trying not to lose circulation in your feet. The group spreads out in a line, spears at the ready. You're instructed to keep your eyes open for movement, or rabbit droppings, or a suspicious tree. You don't ask about that last one. After an hour, the only thing you've found is a squirrel staring at you with open disdain. One man swears he saw a deer track. Another points at a frozen pile of something and claims it's boar. You suspect it's yesterday's goat deposit. Then Rollo barks. Everyone stops. He sprints ahead through the trees, disappearing behind a snow-covered hedge. You all run after him with the grace of exhausted scarecrows. You reach the clearing. Rollo is circling something. A rabbit, small, fluffy, and innocent. One man hurls a spear. It misses entirely and takes out a pine branch. The rabbit darts, Rollo gives chase, and all of you follow, tripping over roots, snowbanks, and each other. Eventually, Rollo returns with nothing but pride and a stick. You regroup. No rabbit. But then luck. A man shouts. He lifts a trap from beneath a snow pile. Inside, twitching nervously, is a small hare. Cheers erupt. It's not a feast, but it's something. You return victorious with the hare, a few mushrooms someone found frozen to a log, and the pine branch from the failed spear toss, which is now part of the stew for aroma. Quirky tidbit. Pine needles and bark were sometimes used in winter cooking, not only for flavor, but also because they provided small amounts of vitamin C. Some records even describe pine beer and spruce soup as rustic remedies for winter fatigue. Back at the house, the hare is cleaned and added to the pot. You are politely not invited to help. Your stick spear has been demoted to fire-poking duties. The stew simmers for hours. The scent draws in half the village. Even the pig looks hopeful. You eat with reverence. The meat is chewy but real. The mushrooms are earthy. The pine is present, but it's warm and rich, and everyone smiles with their mouths full. Scholarly debate moment. Some argue that hunting was largely symbolic for peasants, rarely successful, and more about tradition than actual sustenance. Others suggest it was a crucial supplement to preserved winter food, especially in wooded regions. Local laws often complicated the matter, with game reserved for nobles. But in isolated villages, survival trumped legality. As night falls, someone brings out the good salt. Just a pinch sprinkled on the stew as a kind of celebration. You learn it was saved for something special. The hare qualifies. After dinner, stories begin again. This time, they're about past winters who fell through the ice, who found a bear cub once and ran away, who got lost during a blizzard and ended up in the wrong village for 3 days. You share your own tale, the squirrel, the failed spear, the pine stew. It gets a big laugh. You're now Rabbit Slayer despite having never come within 10 feet of it. The nickname sticks. Someone carves it into your spoon. You decide not to fight it. The house is warm. The stew pot is empty. The pig is sleeping against your leg. And while the snow piles higher outside, and tomorrow promises more shoveling, more aching joints, and possibly more spear-based shame, for now you feel like a champion, a full pine-flavored soup-warmed champion. You start the morning as Rabbit Slayer, a title which you did not earn, but which the village now uses with suspicious consistency. Someone carves a tiny rabbit into the side of your wooden bowl. You try to act honored. You mostly feel confused. Breakfast is oatcakes with a side of spicy lard, which from what you can tell is just lard that sat too close to someone's firewood pile. Still, it's something solid in your stomach, and you've stopped asking questions when food appears. Questions get you fewer servings. As you chew, a muffled knock comes at the door. The messenger is a girl bundled in layers so thick she looks like a walking quilt. She holds a small parchment roll and says simply, "Letter from the monastery." Everyone freezes. The scroll is taken to the hearth and read aloud. It's an invitation of sorts. The monastery is opening its doors for the midwinter gathering. There will be a prayer service music, and whispers ripple through the room hot wine. Historical fact: monasteries in medieval Europe often hosted winter gatherings around feast days or liturgical events, offering warmth food and temporary shelter to locals. These moments were spiritual, but also deeply social, offering relief from winter isolation and a rare chance for villagers to bathe, sing, and gossip. The room erupts into activity. Scarves are hunted down, cloaks aired out. One man attempts to polish his boots using lard. You are handed a hat that looks like it used to be part of a wolf. A dozen of you set out along the snowy road. It's a 2-mile walk uphill with the kind of slush that eats boots. You quickly discover the art of communal slipping, where one person falls and 5 others nearly follow. It's oddly bonding. Along the way, one of the women begins a chant. Simple, rhythmic, catchy. Soon, everyone joins in. You add harmony. Badly. No one minds. You arrive at the monastery red-cheeked and winded. It's larger than any building in the village, built of stone and somehow radiating warmth, even in the dead of winter. A monk at the door nods and waves you in. The warmth hits like a friendly slap. Inside, torches flicker. Candles burn on every surface. A brazier sits in the middle of the great hall, casting an orange glow across worn tapestries and rows of simple benches. The smell is incredible incense, honey, and bread. You sit near the fire, peeling off damp layers and thawing your hands. Someone hands you a small clay cup. You sip. It's hot wine, real, actual mulled wine, spiced with cloves and orange peel and maybe the dreams of warmer lands. You nearly weep. Quirky tidbit: mulled wine or hippocras was a popular winter drink among the clergy and upper classes, made from red wine sugar or honey and spices like cinnamon, ginger, and nutmeg. Monasteries often brewed their own, both for medicinal and celebratory purposes, though monks were expected to drink modestly. They mostly did. You're served soup, thick, with chickpeas and actual bits of ham. There is cheese, bread that doesn't shatter. A woman next to you faints from joy. Or the heat, it's unclear. Then the music begins. A group of monks bring out hand-carved instruments, a lute, a rebec, a tiny harp. They begin to play slow, gentle melodies, weaving together notes like embroidery in sound. A few people sing. A child starts dancing and falls into the lap of a sleepy friar. It's the most peaceful moment you've felt since arriving in this century. Scholarly debate moment. Some argue that monasteries were the beating hearts of medieval communities, especially in winter, providing not just spiritual nourishment, but actual nourishment. While others debate how generous they were to peasants, most agree that they hosted major seasonal events, which broke up the monotony of the long, cold months. After the service, everyone is welcome to wash in actual warm water. You queue behind a group of elderly women debating whether rosemary rinse is better than mint. You nod along like you've thought about this extensively. You dunk your hands and face scrub with a cloth and feel reborn again. Then comes the part no one warned you about: the return journey. The sun has dipped low, the path is slick, everyone is full sleepy and slightly tipsy on warm wine. You slip once land in a snowbank and are instantly declared the winner of the day's sledless sledding contest. Rabbit Slayer strikes again, someone says. You accept the honor. Back home, the house feels colder, smaller, but cozier somehow. You curl near the fire with your hat over your eyes and a belly full of chickpeas. Someone is humming the monastery's tune. You hum along. You are clean, warmish, and for the first time in this long medieval winter, you've felt not just survival, but comfort. The storm is over. The wine was hot, and the memory of it all will get you through at least another week of goat wrangling and snow-melting stew. You fall asleep smiling. The next morning is unusually still. No wind, no snow, no goat licking your ear at dawn. You sit up and blink into a room filled with that rarest of medieval luxuries and silence. Everyone else is asleep. The fire has burned low, just a heap of sleepy embers sighing in their ash. Outside, a faint yellow light filters through the window slits. The storm is gone. The clouds have taken the day off. You pull on your boots, now lined with a goat fur scrap someone gave you as a kindness/hint, and head outside. The world is frozen, but bright. The snow has crusted into a shimmering layer that crunches slightly underfoot. The trees are wearing their finest frost lace. The air is cold enough to make your nose regret its existence, but you stay out anyway, just staring at it all. A squirrel runs across a branch and throws snow at you. You decide to take that personally. Behind you, the door creaks open, and one of the children steps out yawning, wrapped in what appears to be 3 tunics and a pair of socks stitched into mittens. Looks like spring's thinking about it, they say. You nod. It feels like the kind of day where winter is easing its grip, just a little, showing you a glimpse of what life could be if you make it through. Back inside, a discussion is brewing quietly over boiled water and a communal heel of bread. It's the idea that maybe it's time to visit the root cellar again. Maybe, just maybe, there's something still edible hiding behind the mummified beets and the haunted potato. You volunteer to help, either out of bravery or because your boots are already on. The root cellar is less a room and more a shallow pit dug into the earth, covered with planks, and a door so heavy it requires two people to lift it without losing a toe. You descend with a candle stub and low expectations, and yet you find them: 2 onions, wrinkled slightly suspect but whole, a bunch of carrots so small and twisted they resemble angry gnomes, and in the corner, miracle of miracles, a sack of dried peas. You return like a champion. The room cheers. Someone kisses one of the onions. The onions do not respond. Historical fact: medieval root cellars were vital for winter survival, designed to keep produce cold but unfrozen. Food was buried in straw, hung from beams, or packed in barrels. Common cellar fare included onions, garlic root vegetables, and dried legumes. But by late winter, spoilage and depletion made each discovery feel like finding treasure. The peas are soaked, the carrots are scrubbed, the onions are chopped with the intensity of holy ritual. Someone adds a handful of barley to the pot. The house begins to smell like something that could actually be described as delicious without a footnote. Lunch is spectacular. You have seconds. You offer your bowl to be licked clean. The pig beats you to it. Then comes an unusual announcement: we're cleaning the floor. This may sound like a small event. It is not. It's a logistical and emotional undertaking. Everyone is assigned a section. The floor is swept with bundled twigs. Straw is rolled up and taken outside. Someone lifts an entire sleeping dog and places it gently on a table so they can sweep beneath it. The dog offended pretends to die. You find yourself scrubbing a corner with hot water and ashes, which is either very effective or a medieval prank. The boards beneath emerge lighter, less sticky. A faint scent of wood replaces the scent of stew feet. Quirky tidbit: ash water was a common medieval cleaning solution thanks to its mild alkaline content. It was used to wash floors, laundry, and even hair when mixed with animal fat. It made rudimentary soap. Cleanliness standards varied widely, but a midwinter deep clean was common before major feast days or in preparation for spring. By the time the cleaning is done, the house feels almost new. The air is fresher. The floor no longer crunches underfoot. Everyone collapses in a heap of exhaustion and pride. One woman declares that she could eat off the floor now, but chooses not to because we're not savages. You spend the evening playing Guess the Herb with 3 other people and a sack of dried leaves. You get 2 right mint and definitely not mint. The third turns out to be moss. You don't win. Later, you sit by the fire with your knees up, hands wrapped around a cup of hot broth, and gaze at the clean floor, the happily burbling stew, and the woman still hugging the onion like it owes her rent. Scholarly debate moment. Some suggest that late winter, contrary to popular belief, wasn't always the bleakest time. If a household had managed their stores well, it could be a period of cautious optimism, with more leisure for repairs, cleaning, and even socializing. Others insist it was the most desperate time, when larders emptied and tempers frayed. Likely both were true, depending on your luck, your goat, and your root cellar. You think about this as you sip your broth. Today was good. Tomorrow might snow again, or the peas might run out, or the pig might decide the clean floor is too much pressure and return it to its previous state. But tonight, everything feels a little brighter, a little lighter. The snow is still deep. The wind still waits in the trees. But inside this little room, warmed by fire and peas and the remains of a sacred onion, you feel almost ready for whatever comes next. You wake up to a sound you haven't heard in days. Dripping. Not leaking, not pouring, dripping. A steady tap, tap, tap from the eaves outside, the rhythmic beat of snow surrendering to the sun. The roof isn't groaning under the weight of a blizzard. The shutters aren't rattling in protest. The house, for the first time in a long while, seems to be breathing easier. You poke your head outside and are nearly blinded. The sun is out in full force, reflected on the hard crust of the snow, turning the yard into a blinding white sea. Chickens shuffle about awkwardly, unsure if this is real life or some elaborate prank. One of them slips on the ice rights itself and pretends nothing happened. Even the pig is outside. It's rolled halfway into a sunny patch, belly up, basking like an oddly shaped loaf of bread. The villagers are already at work. Paths are being cleared, tools repaired, and someone has started moving firewood without being asked. This clearly is a turning point. You're put in charge of bucket duty, which involves collecting water from the well before it freezes again overnight. The bucket rope has finally been replaced after months of stubborn fraying. It's smooth now, almost too smooth. You lower the pail with a kind of reverence. The water that comes up is shockingly clear, shockingly cold, and according to the man beside you, shockingly not cursed. You carry it back to the house with numb fingers and a smile. The day feels lighter, like the village is finally lifting its chin after months of hunching into the wind. Historical fact: early thaws were major events in medieval villages. Even a few days of above freezing temperatures allowed people to restock water, assess buildings, and begin preparing for spring planting. But warm spells could also trigger flooding mudslides and refreezing hazards. Villagers treated them with a mix of joy and caution. Inside the house is buzzing. Someone is making flatbread on a hot stone near the fire. Someone else is re-sewing the pig's sleeping mat after it accidentally shredded it during a happy roll. A man hums as he cleans a rusty horseshoe, even though there are no horses. You're tasked with organizing the herb corner. It consists of 5 pouches, a sprig of dried thyme tied to the ceiling with twine, and a handful of mysterious brown nuggets that smell like shoe polish and regret. You sort, sniff, and sneeze your way through them. One pouch is labeled for fever. Another simply says, don't. You place that one at the back. Quirky tidbit. Many peasant households kept small collections of herbs and dried plants hung from beams or stored in linen sacks. While some were used in cooking or for spiritual rituals, others had genuine medicinal effects. Willow bark for pain, chamomile for sleep, and some, like deadly nightshade, were kept for reasons known only to the village grandma. After chores, you sit on the front step, basking in the sun, like the pig soaking up what little warmth the air offers. You sip a cup of thin ale, watch water drip from a tree branch, and sigh with something dangerously close to contentment. Then someone yells, "The road's clear." Everyone rushes toward the eastern edge of the village, where the old cart path vanishes into the woods. Sure enough, the snow has melted just enough to see the dirt trail beneath crusted with ice, but walkable. This means one thing: a trader might come soon. People start talking all at once. What they'll trade, what they need, who has what to barter. A woman declares she'll offer half a spool of thread for dried fruit. Another claims she's willing to part with her best spoon. You look at your spoon, rabbit slayer, proudly etched into the handle. You hug it protectively. Not today. Scholarly debate moment. While long winters isolated many villages, early thaws allowed for the first trickle of trade between communities, often carried out on foot or sled. Merchants brought salt fabrics, preserved foods, and news. These early spring visits were lifelines, and their arrival marked the psychological end of winter, even if the snow returned days later. The rest of the afternoon is spent preparing. Someone gathers feathers to trade. Another sharpens a knife until it gleams like ambition. You're sent to gather the good eggs from the chickens, meaning not the ones laid on the roof in the stew pot or behind the pig. You manage to find 3 intact eggs and one that is technically still egg-shaped. You tuck them into a basket with straw and a whispered prayer. Dinner is lively. People talk about what they'll ask for: dates, pepper vinegar boots, beeswax, a comb that isn't made of wood, and passive aggression. Someone suggests cinnamon, and the room laughs for a full minute. Cinnamon is the stuff of legends. You eat flatbread with onion jam. Yes, jam. Made from onions, oil, and a dash of dried apple. You're told it's a delicacy. You don't argue. Quirky bonus: onion-based preserves weren't unheard of in medieval Europe, often served as savory additions to bread. With sugar scarce, some areas sweetened onions with apples or dried plums. The result: something between a chutney and a dare. That night, everyone sleeps a little easier. The road is open. The sun showed up. The well behaved. Even the rats in the rafters seem quieter, like they too are hopeful. You fall asleep with your rabbit slayer spoon tucked beside you, and the faint dream of cinnamon dancing in your head. Morning arrives with a knock on the door, and not the soft, polite knock of a neighbor borrowing turnips. This is the knock of commerce, of opportunity, of possible raisins. It's the trader. He stands outside the house, wrapped in a fur-lined cloak so heavy it could double as a small cottage. His beard is impressive. His boots are covered in 3 kinds of mud. His sled, yes sled, is loaded with barrel sacks and bundles that might contain anything from preserved cherries to a tax collector. You hope it's the cherries. Everyone scrambles. Scarves are tied. Buttons are rebuttoned. Children are bribed into cleanliness. Someone is polishing a shoe with a piece of lard. You grab your basket of offerings, a cracked mug, a spool of coarse thread, 2 clean eggs, and a turnip that has somehow become your emotional support vegetable. You approach the trader like a medieval contestant on Let's Make a Deal. He eyes your offerings, squints at your eggs, and grunts approvingly at the thread. Then with great ceremony he opens his sled and reveals glory. Dried cherries, a jar of mustard, 2 bars of soap, a bag of salt the size of your head, and impossibly an orange, an actual orange, bright, round, aromatic. Everyone gasps. One child asks if it's magic. Historical fact: fresh fruit in winter, especially citrus, was a rare luxury in northern medieval Europe. Occasionally brought in by merchants traveling along coastal or southern routes, oranges were expensive and often used in medicine or reserved for nobles. But every so often, a lucky village would see one roll in on a trader's cart like a golden miracle. The bidding begins. One woman offers a wool cloak and a ladle for the soap. A man offers jerky and a dried mushroom for the mustard. Someone offers a kiss for the cherries. The trader politely declines. Then comes the orange. You step forward with your cracked mug eggs thread and turnip. The trader considers. He takes the thread. He sniffs the eggs. He taps the turnip like a melon. Finally, he says, "Half an orange." You nod like he just proposed marriage. He slices it with a small, clean knife and hands you a wedge. You hold it carefully, reverently, like a tiny sun in your palm. You take a bite. Sweet, tart, juicy. You nearly cry. You share it, of course. That's the rule. A few drops for the baby. A section for the old man who hasn't spoken since Candlemas. Even the pig gets a sniff. Quirky tidbit. In some villages, exotic goods were shared communally, especially symbolic ones. A single orange or spice might be divided during feast days, weddings, or for someone recovering from illness. These items carried not just flavor, but hope. The rest of the trader's goods are exchanged and packed away. Salt for jerky, soap for socks, mustard for wool. You manage to snag a tiny cloth pouch of dried figs in exchange for helping shovel snow off the sled. Victory. The trader leaves just as the clouds roll in again. Snow threatens. You wave goodbye, cheeks sticky with orange juice and joy. Back inside, the house is buzzing. The salt is divided into tiny heaps. The soap is locked away like treasure. The fig pouch is passed around. Someone eats one size and says, "I remember this taste from my wedding." You sit near the hearth and watch the snow start up again. Small flakes this time, gentle, decorative. Dinner is a celebration. Flatbread, onion mash, stewed beans. Someone sprinkles actual salt into the pot, and everyone gasps. Scholarly debate moment. Though peasants rarely accessed luxury goods, the arrival of traders, even once or twice each winter, provided both literal sustenance and a psychological boost. The chance to taste something different, barter stories, as well as wares, and feel connected to the larger world gave the long winters a sense of motion. Historians argue that these moments of exchange were as important as feast days in preserving morale. Later that night, you carve a small orange into the handle of your spoon right next to the rabbit. You've survived storms, soot-flavored gruel goat judgment, and straw mattresses with a personal vendetta. Now you've tasted citrus. The pig snorts approvingly in its sleep. You fall asleep with sticky fingers and a faint fig aftertaste on your tongue. Not bad, rabbit slayer. Not bad at all. You awaken to a peculiar sound singing, not the quiet humming of someone stirring porridge or the under-the-breath chant of a parent trying to distract a toddler from licking the pig again, but full-throated actual singing. You sit up. The room is already alive with movement. People are sweeping, baking, arranging bundles of herbs, and oddest of all, smiling. The old man, who usually only grunts in vowels, is now whistling a tune that may or may not be about ale. You blink at the nearest person. What's happening? They grin. Tomorrow is St. Cuthbert's Eve. You nod slowly. Great. Who's St. Cuthbert? They shrug. The one with the geese, I think. Historical fact. Saint days were vital parts of the medieval calendar, often offering a sanctioned break from labor fasting or fasting from fasting. Even lesser known saints, like Cuthbert Walpurga or Botolph, were honored in different regions with specific traditions, meals, and games. These days were more than spiritual, they were social glue. You are immediately assigned a job, not your usual goat feeding or bucket lugging. Today you are making decorative bread birds. Apparently, this is a local tradition. Bake tiny birds out of dough, shape them with spoons, and set them around the hearth for good luck. You are given a small ball of dough, a wooden skewer, and 0 instructions. Your first attempt looks like a potato with wings. Your second resembles a very sad duck. By the third, you produce something vaguely pigeon-like, and everyone cheers. You're back in the game. Around the room, similar rituals unfold. One woman embroiders the hem of a tunic with tiny stitches of red thread to keep away frost spirits. A boy crafts paper-thin reeds into whistles and tests them at inappropriate volumes. Someone ties ribbons to the doorposts and mutters blessings with one eye open. Then comes the stew. Not your regular humble watery stew. This is feast stew. Chunks of meat, sprigs of herbs, an entire onion. Someone even claims there's a splash of wine in the broth, and no one dares question it. You help prepare it, and in doing so, learn the sacred art of herb stretching, making one sprig of rosemary seem like it flavored 3 pots. You also learn that the secret ingredient is often just garlic someone hid under their cloak until the traitor left. Quirky tidbit. Medieval feasts didn't always mean gluttony. Often it was about presentation, stacking food, higher spicing things more boldly, or using precious ingredients sparingly for symbolic effect. A whole clove of garlic or a pinch of spice could elevate a dish into celebration status. By evening, the house is glowing. Literally, everyone saved their best tallow candles for this. A dozen flicker on shelves, windowsills even atop the firewood pile. The pig is warned to keep its distance. Shadows dance on the walls like sleepy puppets. Children hang bundles of dried flowers in the rafters. They smell faintly of summer and moths. A man sings a ballad about St. Cuthbert, taming wild geese with a flute made of his own walking stick. You decide not to question the details. Dinner is a marvel. Warm, rich stew, flatbread with salt. Even a bit of the fig stash is brought out. People eat, slowly savoring every bite, as though chewing might summon spring faster. You sit near the hearth with your bowl watching the firelight reflect off the side of your rabbit slayer spoon. The orange carving glows faintly still fragrant if you press your nose to it. After dinner, someone brings out a game spin the bone. It's just a pig knuckle polished smooth spun on the table. Wherever it points, that person must answer a riddle sing or tell a joke. You are chosen third. You panic, you stand, you clear your throat, and you tell the story of the time you chased a rabbit with a crooked stick, got stuck in a snowbank, and ended up face to face with an angry squirrel. The room erupts. One woman laughs so hard she snorts ale through her nose. The pig looks at you with fresh respect. Scholarly debate moment. While historical records often downplay medieval humor, many feasts included jokes, riddles, and comic storytelling. Winter games, especially on saint days, offered a much-needed psychological break and reminded communities of their shared humanity. Laughter, it turns out, survived every frost. Later, someone sings a lullaby in the dialect of their grandmother. Another adds a low harmony. The rest hum. The candles burn lower. You settle into your straw belly full feet, warm face sore from smiling. You never thought you'd laugh this much in winter. Never thought a wooden spoon and a bread bird would bring you joy. But tonight is Cuthbert's Eve, and tomorrow maybe the geese will come early. St. Cuthbert's Day arrives with no fanfare, no trumpets, no celestial geese descending in tidy rows, just the slow creak of a thawing roof and the warm smell of last night's stew reheated for breakfast. You stretch beneath your blankets, a straw poking your elbow, and realize you are no longer freezing. Sure, it's still cold, but not I can see my thoughts cold, the kind of cold that feels more like a strong opinion than a life-threatening condition. Outside there's fog, heavy, milky, and low, like the sky is still deciding whether or not to wake up. The snow is receding in strange patches, bare earth shows in places that haven't been seen since November. A chicken stands in one such patch, looking confused and faintly betrayed. The villagers move slower today, not with exhaustion, but with something almost like peace. The past weeks have been rough snow wind, gloops rodents, and more onions than any one person should endure. But somehow, miraculously, everyone's still here. There's an air of reverence, a kind of quiet that comes not from lack of things to say, but from the mutual understanding that this was hard, and you did it. You help tidy the hearth, brushing away soot with a fir branch. You rearrange the bread birds, most of which have gone slightly moldy, and yet no one wants to throw them out. They still work, someone says. You don't question it. The morning is spent outside. A woman reads old omens in the shape of melting ice. A man marks the road with charcoal to track how quickly it clears. Children play with slush like it's a new invention. You are handed a small rake and told to help clear out the goat pen. It is aromatic. Still, there's no wind, no frostbite, no need to break water, barrels open with an axe. You work with your sleeves rolled up. You even sweat slightly. It feels illegal. Historical fact: feast days near the end of winter often doubled as practical transitions into early spring chores. Fields were cleared, tools sharpened, new shoes made. People took stock of what was left and what would need planting. These weren't just celebrations, they were early rehearsals for renewal. Lunch is a feast of leftovers, flatbread from yesterday, thickened stew, and the last of the good salt. Someone produces a pickle. No one knows where it came from. It is shared in reverent silence. Then come the stories. People take turns telling tales of their worst winter moments. One man tells of the time he fell asleep on a dung pile for warmth. A woman recounts the blizzard of 5 years ago when the pig got stuck in a barrel and wouldn't come out for 3 days. Your own story of the goat, the soup, and the pine-scented disaster is met with tears of laughter. Someone dubs you Cabbage Night. It sticks. Quirky tidbit nicknames were often earned during winter. Frost toes, snow pants, or soup burner were affectionate badges of honor. They told stories, preserved moments, and reminded everyone of who had slipped, spilled, or survived in memorable fashion. In the afternoon, the oldest man in the village, whose eyebrows now resemble winter moss, gathers everyone to the fire for the annual Cuthbert blessing. He says nothing for several seconds. Then, in his slow, scratchy voice, he says, "Don't eat anything green unless you planted it. Don't trust the thaw. It always lies once. And always keep your spoon." He holds up his own spoon. It's old, carved, worn smooth by decades of stew. You lift Rabbit Slayer in silent solidarity. Then, in a surprise turn of events, the pig attempts to speak. More accurately, it snorts, loudly knocks over a bowl of broth, and then runs full speed into the doorframe before resuming its nap. It is declared a divine omen. Everyone cheers. Scholarly debate moment. While the church calendar dictated many Saint Day customs, local practices often took on wildly personal meanings. In isolated villages, humor, food, and memory blended with ritual in ways modern historians are only beginning to document. Cuthbert's geese, for instance, are likely a regional invention, one of thousands of unique winter myths passed down by firelight. That night, after the laughter dies down and the fire has settled into a cozy murmur, you slip outside for one last breath of air. The snow is melting in earnest now. You can hear the drip, drip, drip of winter retreating. Somewhere a bird sings a single note. You don't recognize it. You decide it's spring's opening line. Back inside, you curl into your straw, now packed tight and soft from weeks of use. You tuck Rabbit Slayer under your arm. You breathe in the smoky, onion-scented comfort of the house. You made it. You survived a medieval winter. And not just survived, you lived, laughed, slipped on ice, traded thread for half an orange, nearly lost a toe, befriended a pig, and were crowned Cabbage Knight. As you drift off to sleep, someone farts in their sleep. It is strangely comforting. The fire crackles. The rat in the rafters sneezes. You smile. And now, as the fire in your mind begins to dim, and the long memory of winter fades like footprints in melting snow, you let your breath slow. The flickering torchlight of your thoughts settles into warm embers, each glowing softly with moments you've gathered little treasures from a time of cold and closeness. The steam rising from the soup pot, the warm weight of the hot stone in your socks, the laughter shared over onion stew and frozen bread, and the quiet hush of snow-covered mornings where the world stood still. You remember how the wind howled like a wild thing in the rafters, how the pig snored like it was auditioning for the village choir, how you spent hours chasing a rabbit and ended up earning a spoon with your name carved into it. You remember the soft glow of candlelight, the rustle of straw beneath woolen blankets, the smell of bread just beginning to bake, and the gentle crack of ice as it finally gave in to the sun. You are not just surviving anymore. You are resting. You are safe wrapped in your cloak of stories, tucked beside a fire that has never gone out even in the harshest of nights. So breathe now. Let go of the cold. Let go of the chores. Let the snow melt in your mind. And sleep, dear Rabbit Slayer, Cabbage Knight friend of goats and whisperer of soup. Sleep like the fire is full, like the stew is thick, like the roof doesn't leak. Sleep like the rats are singing lullabies. Sleep like it's finally spring.